My phone buzzed with a live stream notification instead of congratulations. On screen, the man I had loved for 5 years was toasting his freedom in first class. 300 guests froze in pity. Just as I grabbed my $15,000 dress to run, a warm hand gripped my waist. Sterling Blackwood, my ruthless boss, leaned in, smelling of sandalwood. "Don't cry," he whispered. "Play the role of a lifetime, because from this moment, I am the groom. My name is Cassandra Hawthorne, and I was currently standing in the center of the most expensive blind spot in Chicago. The Sovereign Hotel ballroom was a masterpiece of crystal chandeliers and gold-leafed molding, a venue that cost more than my father made in a year. Filled with 300 of the city's elite, they were all looking at me. They were all waiting. And I was standing there in a custom Vera Wang gown that cost $15,000, clutching a bouquet of white peonies that were beginning to wilt from the heat of my trembling hands. The groom was late, not 10 minutes late, not traffic on the loop late. Liam Vance was 2 hours late. He is probably just terrified. Cassie, Becca, my maid of honor, whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. She was fiddling nervously with the iPad connected to the massive projection screen behind the altar. It was supposed to play a montage of our 5-year relationship photos of us at the lake house, our first Christmas, the proposal in Central Park. Men get cold feet. It is a biological fact. 2 hours is not cold feet, Becca, I replied, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. 2 hours is frostbite. 2 hours is an amputation. I scanned the room. I saw the pity in the eyes of my colleagues from Apex Horizon. I saw the agitation in my father's jaw, grinding back and forth as he checked his watch for the 100th time. My mother was fanning herself rapidly with a program, her face a mask of crumbling composure. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the stale odor of impending disaster. Then, the screen behind me flickered. A high-pitched screech of audio feedback cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Everyone jumped. Becca gasped, tapping frantically on the screen. "Oh God. Sorry, I think I hit the wrong source. It is syncing with... Wait, is that his Instagram?" The massive screen, meant to display our love story, suddenly illuminated with a live broadcast. The red live icon pulsed in the corner, and there was Liam. He was not stuck in traffic. He was not in a hospital. He was sitting in the plush, cream-colored leather seat of a first-class airplane cabin. He was holding a flute of champagne, his tie loosened, a grin plastered across his face that I had never seen before. It was the grin of a man who had just gotten away with murder. "To freedom!" Liam shouted at the camera, clinking his glass against another one that appeared in the frame. "Goodbye to the ball and chain. Goodbye to the boring suburban life. We are out of here." The camera panned. My heart stopped beating. It literally stopped. Next to him, laughing that tinkling, artificial laugh I knew too well, was a woman with platinum blonde hair and diamonds dripping from her ears. I recognized her instantly. Everyone in the room did. It was Jessica Thorne, the daughter of the CEO of Vortex Corp, Apex Horizon's biggest competitor. "You are terrible, Liam," Jessica giggled, leaning in to kiss him on the cheek. "She is probably still standing at the altar like an idiot." "Let her stand," Liam sneered, taking a gulp of champagne. "I spent 5 years pretending to care about her marketing strategies. I earned this vacation. Maldives. Here we come." The feed was cut out. The silence that followed was heavy, physical, and suffocating. It felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the ballroom. 300 people stared at the blank screen. And then, slowly, they turned to look at me. I could feel my blood freezing in my veins. The humiliation was not a wave. It was a tsunami. It crashed over me, pulling me under. I heard a gasp from my mother, followed by the thud of her purse hitting the floor as she slumped into my aunt's arms. My father let out a roar of inarticulate rage, shoving a waiter aside as he moved toward the exit, presumably to find a way to kill a man who was currently 30,000 feet in the air. Then came the sound that breaks a human soul, the sound of cameras shuddering. I looked around. People were not just watching, they were recording. Phones were raised like weapons. I could see the screens glowing. They were live streaming my destruction. Abandoned bride. Wedding fail. Cassandra Hawthorne is a joke. Oh my God, someone whispered loud enough to be a shout. Did you see that? He left her for the Vortex heiress? I knew it, another voice hissed. She always aimed too high. A marketing director thinking she could keep a man like Liam. Poor thing. Look at her. She looks like she is going to throw up. I was going to throw up. My vision blurred. The walls of the ballroom seemed to be closing in. The gold leaf turning into bars of a cage. I was 29 years old. I was the director of marketing for a multi-billion-dollar company. I was a strong, independent woman. And in 1 minute and 45 seconds, I had been reduced to a punchline. I gripped the silk of my skirt. I had to run. I had to get out of here before I started screaming and never stopped. I turned toward the side exit, my heels slipping on the polished marble. But before I could take a step, the double doors at the back of the room slammed open. It was not my father returning. It was not hotel security. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. If Liam's video had sucked the air out of the room, this man's entrance froze time itself. Sterling Blackwood. He was 32 years old, the CEO of Apex Horizon, my boss, and a man the business world called the Ruthless Machine. He was 6 feet 2 inches of tailored Italian wool and cold. Hard intellect. He had never been seen at a social event that wasn't strictly mandatory for business. He certainly hadn't been on my guest list. Yet, there he was. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin. His dark hair was swept back, severe and immaculate. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, swept over the room with a look of utter boredom and disdain. The whispers stopped. The phones lowered slightly. Sterling Blackwood did not just command a room, he owned the oxygen within it. He did not stop at the entrance. He did not look for a seat. He walked straight down the aisle, his strides long and purposeful. The guests parted for him like the Red Sea. He looked at no one. His gaze was fixed entirely on me. I was paralyzed. Why was he here? Was he here to fire me? Had Liam stolen company secrets? And was I being implicated? Was he here to witness the final destruction of his marketing director so he could minimize the PR fallout? He reached the altar. He stepped up onto the platform, towering over me, up close. He was devastating. I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the faint shadow of stubble that was the only sign of humanity on his face. I opened my mouth to apologize, to explain, to beg him to leave. But before I could make a sound, his hand shot out. It was a large, warm hand. It gripped my waist with a firmness that shocked me. He pulled me against him, destroying the professional distance we had maintained for 3 years. The smell of him hit me sandalwood, expensive scotch, and the crisp scent of winter air. It was a scent I knew from boardrooms and elevators, but felt dangerously intimate now. He leaned down. His lips brushed the shell of my ear. The sensation sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. "Stop shaking," he commanded. His voice was a low rumble, audible only to me. "And for God's sake, do not cry. You are Cassandra Hawthorne. You do not cry for trash." "Mr. Blackwood," I choked out, my voice trembling. "What are you doing? You need to leave. Please. This is—" "A disaster," he finished for me. "A PR nightmare, a stock market crash waiting to happen on Monday morning." He pulled back slightly, just enough to look into my eyes. His expression was unreadable, a mask of stone. "Do you know what happens if the director of marketing for Apex Horizon becomes the laughingstock of Chicago? Cassandra, do you know what happens when the world finds out she was duped by a man working for our biggest competitor? It makes you look weak. It makes the company look incompetent. Our stock will drop 5% by noon tomorrow." I stared at him. He was talking about stock prices. My heart had just been ripped out of my chest, and he was talking about market fluctuations. I don't care about the stock," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. You should, he countered, his voice hard. Because right now, your reputation is dissolving. Look at them. He tilted his head toward the crowd. They are eating you alive. They are writing the headline for tomorrow's paper. Abandoned bride. Pathetic. Loser. Is that who you are? No, I sobbed quietly. Then fix it. How? I asked, desperate. He is gone. Sterling. He is gone. Sterling's eyes narrowed. It was the first time I had ever called him by his first name. He didn't flinch. Pretend I am the groom, he whispered. The world stopped spinning. I blinked. Sure, I had hallucinated the words. What? Play along, he hissed, his grip on my waist tightening. Pretend I am the groom. Pretend he was just a stand-in. Pretend this was the plan all along. He has been waiting like an idiot for 2 hours. No, they were waiting for me. Are you insane? I whispered back. You are my boss. This is illegal. This is crazy. It is necessary, he stated, his logic cold and sharp as a scalpel. You need a husband to save your face. I need a stable image to calm the board of directors who have been breathing down my neck to settle down. It is a transaction. Cassandra, I save you, you save me. He looked at the crowd, then back at me. Make a choice. Right now. You can walk out those doors as the girl Liam Vance dumped, and watch your career and your dignity burn to ash. Or you can take my hand, stand tall, and make every single person in this room envy you. You can have revenge, or you can have pity. Which one do you want? I looked past his shoulder. I saw Becca looking at me with tears in her eyes. I saw my cousin smirking behind her hand. I saw the phones, the unblinking eyes of the cameras broadcasting my misery to the world. And then I thought of Liam. I thought of his laugh. Let her stand. Something inside me snapped. It was not a break. It was a hardening. The grief crystallized into something colder, sharper. Rage. I looked back at Sterling Blackwood. His eyes were dark, challenging, promising nothing but survival. I choose revenge, I whispered. Sterling's lips quivered in the barest ghost of a smile. Good girl. He turned to the room. He released my waist and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine with a possessive ease that made my breath hitch. He raised his voice, projecting it to the back of the hall without shouting. Apologies for the delay. Everyone, Sterling announced. His voice was smooth, rich, and completely devoid of nervousness. I ran into some trouble with the legal team finalizing the prenup. You know how lawyers are? A collective gasp swept through the room. The phones lowered. The whispers died instantly. My father stopped halfway to the door, his mouth hanging open. Mr. Blackwood, the officiant squeaked, looking from his notepad to the man standing before him. I believe there has been a mistake. The groom is Mr. Vance. Sterling looked at the officiant as if he were a particularly slow child. Mr. Vance was a decoy. Sterling lied, the falsehood rolling off his tongue like velvet. Given the high-profile nature of my position and the security risks involved, Miss Hawthorne and I decided to keep our engagement private until the very last second. Mr. Vance was kind enough to play the part to throw off the press. Clearly, he decided to exit with a bit of theatrical flair. He turned to me, lifting my hand to his lips. He kissed my knuckles, his eyes burning into mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. But I am here now, darling. Shall we proceed? The room erupted, not with laughter this time, but with shock, confusion, awe. Sterling Blackwood, the billionaire CEO, marrying his marketing director. It was scandalous. It was unbelievable, and it was infinitely more interesting than a runaway groom. I squeezed his hand back, my nails digging into his palm. Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Let's proceed. The officiant, realizing that arguing with Sterling Blackwood was a good way to never work in this town again, cleared his throat nervously. Very well, we will skip the vows. Please, Sterling said. As we stood there, I felt like I was floating outside of my body. I was marrying my boss. I was marrying a stranger. I was committing fraud in front of 300 people. Do you, Sterling Blackwood, take Cassandra Hawthorne to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, Sterling said, his voice ringing out with absolute certainty. And do you, Cassandra Hawthorne, take Sterling Blackwood to be your lawfully wedded husband? I looked at his face. It was a mask, perfect and impenetrable, but in his eyes, I saw a flicker of something else. No pity, partnership. I do, I said. The rings? The officiant asked. My heart plummeted. We didn't have rings. Liam had the rings. He had probably pawned them for that champagne. I panicked. Looking at Sterling. This is it. I thought, the charade is over, but Sterling didn't flinch. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. Of course, he said softly. He pulled out a small black velvet box. He flipped it open. I audibly gasped. The front row gasped. It wasn't a simple band. It wasn't the modest 2-carat diamond Liam had given me. It was a monster. A massive, emerald-cut diamond that had to be at least 10 carats, flanked by 2 sapphires that were darker than the ocean. It was an antique, heavy with history and screaming of old money. It was the kind of ring you didn't buy at a store. It was the kind of ring you inherited from a grandmother who owned railroads. This is the Blackwood family crest ring, Sterling said, his voice loud enough for the cameras to pick up. He slid the heavy cold metal onto my finger. It fit perfectly. How did it fit? How did he have this in his pocket? He looked at me, and for a second, the mask slipped. I told you, Cassandra, he whispered, so low only I could hear. I am a man who prepares for every investment. By the power vested in me, the officiant stammered, clearly overwhelmed. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may, kiss the bride. Sterling didn't wait. He didn't hesitate. He leaned in, one hand cupping my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. Make it look real, he murmured against my lips, and then he kissed me. It wasn't a polite peck. It was a claim. His lips were firm, demanding, and shockingly hot. The world dissolved into a blur of white light and sandalwood. For a moment, I forgot Liam. I forgot the live stream. I forgot the contract. I forgot that this was all a lie. When he pulled away, I was breathless. The crowd roared with applause. The flashbulbs blinded me. I looked up at my husband, my savior, my boss. Smile, Mrs. Blackwood, Sterling said, his eyes glittering with a dangerous triumph. The show has just begun. The silence inside the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was heavier than the $15,000 dress threatening to crush my ribs. The leather seats were cool against my bare arms, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the ballroom we had just fled. Outside the tinted windows, the Chicago skyline blurred into streaks of amber and steel, but I saw none of it. I was still vibrating with the aftershocks of the last 3 hours. I was married. I was married to Sterling Blackwood. I glanced sideways at him. He was typing furiously on his phone, the blue light illuminating the sharp planes of his face. He looked calm, clinical, utterly detached from the chaos he had just orchestrated. He had unbuttoned his jacket, but his tie remained perfectly knotted, a symbol of the control he refused to relinquish. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. The itinerary said the bridal suite at the Sovereign. "We are not going to the Sovereign," Sterling replied without looking up. "Unless you want to spend your wedding night answering questions from TMZ and dodging paparazzi in the hallway. We are going to my penthouse. It is secure." "Your penthouse," I repeated dully. "Of course." The car pulled into the private underground garage of the Obsidian Tower. A building Sterling owned, naturally. We took the private elevator up to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that looked less like a home and more like a spread in Architectural Digest. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, but the interior was all chrome, black marble, and white leather. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely devoid of warmth. "Make yourself comfortable," Sterling said, walking straight to the wet bar. "Do you want a drink? You look like you're about to faint." "I am fine," I lied. My legs were shaking so bad I had to lean against a marble pillar. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass and downed it in one swallow. Then he reached into his briefcase, which his driver had brought up, and pulled out an iPad. "Sit down, Cassandra," he said, gesturing to the white leather sofa. "We need to talk about business." "Business," I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "I just got married to my boss after my fiancé left me on a live stream, and you want to talk business?" "This is business," Sterling said, his voice hardening. He sat opposite me and slid the iPad across the coffee table. "Read it." I looked down. The screen displayed a document titled Marriage of Convenience Agreement Blackwood Hawthorne. I stared at him. "You had this ready." "My lawyers are very efficient," he said. "Here are the terms. 1 year. We stayed married for exactly 365 days. During that time, we present a united front. You play the role of the devoted wife, attending galas, dinners, and corporate events. In return, you get access to my resources, my protection, and a very generous monthly stipend." "Why?" I asked, ignoring the document. "I get why you saved me back there. PR, stock prices. But why a year? Why a contract?" Sterling leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "Because the board is getting restless. My grandfather's trust stipulates that I must be married by my 33rd birthday to inherit full control of the conglomerate. That birthday is in 2 months. They have been pushing heiresses and debutantes on me for years. This," he gestured between us, "solves that problem. It gives me control. And it gives you a shield." "A shield?" I whispered. "Yes, a shield against humiliation, a shield against Liam." The name hung in the air like a curse. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. "Speaking of Liam," I said, my voice trembling with a sudden, dark realization. "You had a ring. You had a speech prepared. You knew." I looked at him, my eyes narrowing. "How did you know he wouldn't show up? Sterling, how did you know?" Sterling didn't flinch. "I have had private investigators watching Liam Vance for 6 months. I felt the blood drain from my face." "What? Why?" "Because I suspected he was leaking proprietary data from your department," Sterling said, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "I didn't expect him to be stupid enough to run away on his wedding day. I thought he would marry you to solidify his cover, but apparently, his cowardice outweighed his greed." "Leaking data." I stood up, the room spinning. "My department. You think I helped him?" "If I thought you helped him, you would be in prison, not in my penthouse," Sterling said calmly. "Sit down, Cassandra." I didn't sit. "He used me," I whispered, the horror of it sinking in. It wasn't just about the other woman. It wasn't just about the humiliation. He dated me for 5 years, to steal from Apex. He sold our Q3 marketing strategies to Vortex 2 weeks ago, Sterling confirmed. He sold the client list for the new tech launch last month. That is how he funded his first-class ticket to the Maldives. He tapped the iPad screen, bringing up a new window. It was a dossier, bank transfers, emails between Liam and a contact at Vortex, and finally, a photo taken just hours ago. Liam and Jessica Thorne, laughing on a white sand beach, holding cocktails. "He is in the Maldives," Sterling said softly. "Celebrating." I stared at the photo, the man I had loved, the man I had defended to my friends when they said he wasn't ambitious enough. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had cannibalized my career to feed his own. The grief in my chest evaporated, replaced by a cold, burning fury. It started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. "Where do I sign?" I asked. Sterling arched an eyebrow. "You agree?" 1 year, I said, my voice steady. "I play the wife, I secure your inheritance, but I want something else in return." "Name it." "I want him destroyed." I said. I don't just want him fired. I want him to be unemployed. I want him to lose every cent he stole. I want Jessica Thorne to look at him with the same disgust the world looked at me with today. Sterling smiled. It wasn't the polite smile he used for investors. It was the sharp, predatory smile of a shark scenting blood. Done. He pointed to the bottom of the document. There is one more clause, Clause 14. Read it. I scrolled down. Clause 14. Emotional fidelity. Both parties agree that this union is strictly professional. There will be no expectation of romantic involvement, sexual intimacy, or emotional attachment. Any breach of this clause will result in the immediate termination of the agreement. No feelings, I summarized. It is safer that way, Sterling said, his eyes dark. For both of us, I signed. Good, Sterling said, closing the iPad. Now, let's get some sleep. It has been a long day. He stood up and led me down the hallway. I had my housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, prepare the guest room for you. She is old-fashioned, but she is efficient. He stopped dead in his tracks. We were standing in front of the master bedroom. The double doors were wide open. Inside, the room had been transformed. Dozens of candles flickered on every surface. The air was thick with the scent of roses. And the massive king-sized bed was literally covered in red rose petals, arranged in the shape of a heart. Standing in the middle of the room, fluffing a pillow, was a stout, elderly woman with white hair. She turned and beamed at us. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Blackwood. Mrs. Higgins cried, clapping her hands. Oh, what a wonderful surprise I saw the news on the television, married and to think. You kept it a secret from me. Sterling looked at me. I looked at Sterling. Mrs. Higgins, Sterling started, his voice strained. This is lovely, but we were planning on nonsense. She bustled over, ushering us into the room. It is your wedding night. I have put fresh Egyptian cotton sheets on the bed. I have chilled a bottle of Dom Perignon. I moved all of Mr. Sterling's things to one side so there is plenty of room for the lady. She looked at me with teary eyes. You are beautiful, my dear. Finally, this house will have some life in it. She bustled out, closing the door behind her with a definitive click. We were alone, in a candlelit room, with a heart made of rose petals on the bed. Well, Sterling said, loosening his tie, this complicates things. I can sleep on the sofa, I said quickly. Don't be ridiculous, Sterling scoffed. You are exhausted, and if Higgins comes back in the morning and finds you on the sofa, she will lecture me for a month. The bed is big enough for 3 people. We can manage. He walked into the massive walk-in closet and emerged a few minutes later wearing gray sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt. It was jarring. I had only ever seen him in armor suits, ties, cufflinks. Seeing his bare arms, the way the t-shirt clung to his chest, made him look human. I went into the bathroom and struggled out of my wedding dress. I washed the heavy makeup off my face, staring at the stranger in the mirror. I put on the oversized silk pajama set I found in a drawer clearly meant for a guest, or perhaps a previous girlfriend, though Sterling claimed to have none. When I came out, Sterling was already in bed, lying on the far left edge, reading a book. He didn't look up. I climbed into the other side, keeping as much distance as possible between us. The mattress was soft, swallowing me whole. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing. Stop thinking so loud, Sterling murmured from the darkness. I can't help it, I whispered. I keep seeing his face, on the screen, laughing. He is the past. Cassandra, you are the future. Go to sleep. Surprisingly, I did. Exhaustion pulled me under like a tide. But sleep was not a sanctuary. I was back in the ballroom. The screen was huge, looming over me. But this time, it wasn't Liam on the screen. It was everyone I knew. My parents, my friends, Sterling. They were all laughing, pointing. You are not enough, they chanted. You were never enough. I tried to run, but my dress turned into vines, dragging me down into the floor. No, I gasped, jerking awake. I was sitting up, drenched in cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The room was dark, but a hand was on my shoulder. Cassandra. It wasn't a question. It was an anchor. Sterling was sitting up, looking at me, in the dim light of the city filtering through the curtains. His eyes were soft. Gone was the ruthlessness. He looked concerned. I had a nightmare, I stammered, wiping my face. I am sorry. Did I wake you? He didn't answer. He got out of bed and walked to the minibar in the corner. He poured a small amount of amber liquid into a glass and brought it to me. Drink, he said gently. It is whiskey. It helps. I took a sip. It burned, but the warmth spread through my chest, grounding me. Sterling sat on the edge of the bed, not too close, but close enough that I could feel his body heat. It wasn't your fault, he said quietly. Everyone thinks it was, I replied bitterly. They think I wasn't enough to keep him. They are idiots, Sterling said. And Liam is a fool. He traded a diamond for a piece of glass because the glass was shiny and easy to hold. You challenged him. Cassandra. You were smarter than him, better than him. That terrified him. He took the glass from my trembling hands and set it on the nightstand. You want to know how we are going to destroy him? He asked. I looked up. Yes. We are going to make him irrelevant, Sterling said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We are going to take the project he sold to Vortex, your project, and we are going to make it obsolete before they even launch it. We are going to build something better, and you are going to lead it. Me. You. He nodded. You are not just a marketing director anymore. You are a Blackwood. You have resources now. Use them. Channel that anger. Turn it into fuel. He looked at me with such intensity that I forgot to breathe, for the first time all day. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a weapon being sharpened. Now sleep, he commanded softly. Tomorrow, the war begins. He waited until I lay back down before returning to his side of the bed. I fell asleep listening to his breathing, feeling safer than I had in 5 years with Liam. Sunlight hit me like a physical blow. I groaned, shielding my eyes. The space beside me was empty. The sheets were cool. I sat up, my head throbbing slightly from the whiskey and the emotional hangover. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. It had blown up. Texts, calls, emails, but the notifications that caught my eye were the news alerts. Breaking the billionaire and the bride. Inside the secret romance of Sterling Blackwood. Trending Sterling and Cassandra. True love wins. I opened Twitter. The top trending topic wasn't my humiliation. It was a photo of Sterling kissing me at the altar. The caption read, "Look at the way he holds her. That is a man in love." Liam Vance, who, there were memes comparing Liam to a clown and Sterling to a Marvel superhero. There were TikToks analyzing our body language, concluding we had been secretly in love for years. "Good morning," Sterling said from the doorway. He was dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers. Holding a cup of coffee, he looked fresh, rested, and impossibly handsome. "Have you seen this?" I asked, holding up the phone. "I orchestrated it," he replied calmly, handing me the coffee. "My PR team has been working all night. The narrative has shifted. You are no longer the abandoned bride. You are Cinderella, and I am the prince who saved you from the evil frog." I took a sip of the coffee. It was perfect. "And Liam," Sterling smiled, "and it was terrifying." Check the business news. I switched apps. Vortex Corp stock dips. Amidst rumors of unethical hiring. Liam Vance, new Vortex exec, mocked online. After ex-fiancé marries billionaire rival. I tapped on an article. There was a photo of Liam, presumably taken this morning in the Maldives. He looked haggard, staring at his phone with a look of pure horror. "He knows," I whispered. "He knows," Sterling agreed. "And this is just day one. He checked his watch. Patek Philippe. Get dressed. Mrs. Blackwood. We have brunch with the board members in an hour. Wear something expensive. And smile. We have an audience to entertain. I looked at him, at the man who had turned my worst nightmare into a strategic victory. I took a deep breath. The fear was gone. Give me 20 minutes, I said. Walking into the headquarters of Apex Horizon had been my routine for 3 years. I knew the rhythm of the revolving doors, the exact scent of the industrial cleaner used on the marble floors, and the polite, dismissive nods of the security guards who barely registered my existence. Today, however, the atmosphere was unrecognizable. When the black town car pulled up to the curb, not the employee entrance, but the VIP drop-off zone, usually reserved for foreign dignitaries, the air shifted. The doorman, a man named Earl, who had never once held the door for me when my hands were full of coffee trays, practically threw himself at the handle of the car. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood," Earl said, his voice trembling slightly. "Congratulations on the news, Mrs. Blackwood." The name felt heavy on my shoulders, like a coat made of lead. I stepped out. I was wearing a cream-colored power suit Sterling's stylist had sent over at 6 a.m, along with a pair of Louboutins that cost more than my first car. On my left hand, the Blackwood family ring caught the morning sun, sending a prism of light dancing across the pavement. As I walked through the lobby, the noise died. It didn't taper off. It was severed. 200 people, interns, analysts, mid-level managers who had previously undercut my budget proposals, stopped dead in their tracks. I felt their eyes. I felt the mixture of fear, jealousy, and morbid curiosity. Sarah, a senior VP who had spent the last year trying to get me fired, was standing by the elevator bank. As I approached, she turned pale. She pressed the up button frantically, clearly desperate to escape, but the doors didn't open. "Good morning, Sarah," I said. My voice was calm, steady. It was the voice of a woman who had slept in a penthouse. "Cassandra," she stammered, then corrected herself, her eyes darting to the ring. "Mrs. Blackwood, you look radiant." "Thank you," I replied, pressing the button for the executive elevator, the private one. "I will be reviewing the Q4 budget proposals this afternoon. Make sure yours is on my desk by 2. Sarah swallowed hard. "Of course, immediately." The private elevator arrived. As the doors slid open, I saw Sterling. He was already inside, reviewing a dossier. He looked up, and for a second, the mask of the CEO slipped, revealing a flash of amusement. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked as the doors closed, sealing us in a steel cocoon. "It is terrifying," I admitted, leaning against the rail. Sarah looked like she was going to have a stroke. "Good," Sterling said. "Fear is a more reliable motivator than respect. Use it." He stepped closer. The space in the elevator was large, yet he made it feel intimate. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my jawline for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. "There are cameras," he murmured, his eyes flicking to the lens in the corner. "Smile. We are the happy newlyweds returning to our empire." I smiled. I leaned into his touch, my hand coming up to rest on his chest, right over his heart. I could feel the steady, slow beat beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. It was a performance. Yes, but the electricity that zinged through my fingertips felt dangerously real. "Is this part of the contract?" I whispered, keeping the smile fixed. "Everything is part of the contract," Sterling replied, his voice dropping to a low hum. "But that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the perks." The doors opened on the top floor. We walked out hand in hand, a united front of wealth and power. My assistant, a sweet girl named Maya who had been crying for me yesterday, dropped her tablet when she saw us. "Cassandra," she squeaked, then blushed. "I mean, ma'am, Mr. Blackwood." "It is okay, Maya," I said softly. "I am still me, but I wasn't." We both knew it. The real test came at 10 o'clock. The emergency board meeting. The boardroom was a shark tank. 12 men and 3 women sat around the mahogany table, their expressions ranging from skepticism to open hostility. At the head of the table sat Marcus Vane, a man who had been trying to oust Sterling for 5 years. "This is highly irregular. Sterling," Marcus began before we even sat down. He didn't look at me. To him, I was invisible. "You marry your subordinate in a shotgun wedding broadcast live on social media. It screams instability. The shareholders are asking if this is a mental breakdown." Sterling pulled out my chair for me, waiting until I was seated before taking his own place at the head of the table. He didn't speak immediately. He let the silence stretch until Marcus began to fidget. "Instability," Sterling repeated, tasting the word. "Interesting choice of vocabulary. Marcus, yesterday, our stock was poised to drop 4% due to the scandal involving our former vendor. Mr. Vance, today, thanks to this instability, our stock is up 7%. The media is calling it the romance of the decade. We have generated $3 million in free publicity in 24 hours. It is a circus," Marcus spat. "And she," he finally pointed a manicured finger at me, "she is a liability, a marketing director with no executive experience sitting at this table. What does she bring to the Blackwood legacy besides a sob story?" I felt my temper flare, but Sterling's hand found mine under the table. His grip was bruising. "Wait," it said. "She is not a liability, Marcus," Sterling said, his voice dropping to that lethal temperature that froze rooms. "Cassandra is the only person at this table who actually understands the consumer base. While you were playing golf in the Hamptons, she was analyzing user data. She predicted the shift to AI-integrated marketing 6 months before any of you." He looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. "She is not just my wife, she is my greatest asset, and anyone who disrespects her is disrespecting the future of this company. Do I make myself clear?" The silence was absolute. Marcus Vane turned a shade of red that clashed with his tie, but he nodded stiffly. "Crystal," Marcus muttered, after the meeting. I retreated to my office, which was currently being moved to a suite next to Sterling's. I needed to work. I needed to stop thinking about the way Sterling had defended me. My greatest asset. It was a compliment, yet it felt cold. I was a tool in his arsenal. I logged into the secure server. I had a job to do. I needed to find out exactly what Liam had stolen. It took me 2 hours of digging through the access logs Sterling had provided. When I found it, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. It wasn't just client lists. It wasn't just budget spreadsheets. Liam had copied the source code and the entire architectural framework for Project Aurora. Aurora was my baby. It was an AI-driven interface I had been developing in secret on weekends for 2 years. It was designed to predict consumer needs before the consumer even knew them. It was revolutionary. It was the project I was planning to pitch to Sterling next month to secure my promotion, and Liam had sold it to Vortex. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. He hadn't just stolen from the company. He had stolen my mind. He had stolen the late nights, the missed birthdays, the sheer effort I had poured into creating something that was mine. The door opened. Sterling walked in, closing it softly behind him. He saw my face and knew instantly. "He took Aurora," I stated, my voice flat. Sterling walked over to the desk. He didn't offer pity. "I know. Vortex filed a patent application for a remarkably similar technology this morning. They are calling it the Nexus." "He stole my work," I whispered, slamming my hand on the desk. "He watched me code that. He brought me coffee while I debugged it, and he sold it." "So," Sterling said, leaning against the edge of the desk, crossing his arms, "what are you going to do about it?" "I want to sue him," I said. "I want to sue Vortex." "Litigation takes years," Sterling countered. "By the time we get a court date, Nexus will be launched, and Vortex will have captured the market share. We will win the moral victory and lose the war." "Then what?" I looked up at him. You are a ruthless machine. What would you do? Sterling's eyes gleamed. I wouldn't sue. I would let them launch it. What? Aurora had a flaw. Didn't it? He asked softly. In the initial beta testing, the predictive algorithm had a tendency to create feedback loops if the dataset was too small. I blinked. Yes. I fixed it. I wrote a patch. Did Liam have the patch? I thought back. I had written the patch on a Sunday, 3 days before the wedding. Liam had already left for his bachelor trip. No, I realized. He has the version from 2 weeks ago, version 4.2, the unstable one. Exactly, Sterling smiled. Vortex is rushing to launch. They are skipping beta testing to beat us to market. They are going to install a corrupted AI into their entire client network. He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. You don't have to do anything, Cassandra. You just have to let them pull the trigger. But if you want to be sure, he slid a flash drive across the desk. This contains a command script. If you upload this to the cloud server, Liam is still unknowingly connected to because he is arrogant and didn't change his admin credentials. It will accelerate the feedback loop. It won't just crash the system. It will melt their servers. I looked at the drive. It was a digital bomb. This is corporate sabotage, I said. This is justice, Sterling corrected. He stole your fire. Let him burn with it. My hand hovered over the drive. I thought of Liam's laugh. I thought of Jessica Thorne's smirk. I picked up the drive. Teach me how to run it, I said. That evening, we had to attend a charity gala for the Chicago Arts Council. It was our first official public appearance. We were in the dressing room of the penthouse. Sterling was struggling with his bow tie. His hands, usually so steady, were fumbling with the silk. Allow me, I said, stepping in front of him. He dropped his hands, letting them rest on my waist. The contact burned through the silk of my evening gown. I reached up, my fingers working the fabric of the tie. I was close enough to see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. I was close enough to smell him that intoxicating mix of sandalwood and something sharper, like winter rain. You smell good, Sterling murmured. It wasn't a line. It sounded like a confession. My fingers faltered. I looked up. His gaze was fixed on my mouth. It is bergamot, I whispered. And you are violating Clause 14. Clause 14 prohibits emotional attachment, Sterling replied, his voice rough. It says nothing about appreciating aesthetics. Is that what I am? I finished the knot and flattened the tie against his chest. An aesthetic. You are a masterpiece, Cassandra, he said. And tonight, we are going to put you on display. He stepped back, breaking the tension before it could consume us. But the air in the room remained charged, heavy with things unsaid. My phone buzzed on the vanity. I walked over and picked it up. It was a text from an unknown number. Liam. Stop pretending. Cass, I know you. You are playing the victim, but you were probably sleeping with him for months. How else would he agree to marry you in 5 minutes? You are a whore. And when the world finds out, you will be nothing. My stomach churned. It was a desperate, vicious lash out from a cornered animal. Liam, Sterling asked. He hadn't moved, but his posture had shifted. He looked ready to kill. Yes, I said. I looked at the text. I didn't feel fear. I felt bored. I took a screenshot. Then I blocked the number. He thinks I am afraid, I said, turning to Sterling. He thinks I am the same girl who used to apologize when he forgot my birthday. I opened Instagram. I selected a photo taken by the PR team earlier that day. It was candid. Sterling was opening the car door for me, looking at me with that intense, possessive focus. I looked powerful. I looked expensive. I looked like a queen. I typed the caption, "Some losses are actually upgrades." The trash took itself out. Now, we build the empire. I posted it. Within seconds, the likes began to roll in by the thousands. Ready. Sterling held out his arm. Ready, I said, taking it. As we walked toward the door, Sterling paused. By the way, Pack a bag tonight. We are leaving on Thursday. Where are we going? Paris, Sterling said. The International Tech Summit is this weekend. But I thought we were skipping it this year. We were. Sterling smiled, a cold, ruthless expression that made my heart race. But I received intel that Vortex is planning to sign their contract for the Nexus, your stolen project, with the European distributors in Paris on Saturday. He opened the door, ushering me out into the night. They think they have won, Sterling said. We are going to go to Paris. Cassandra, we are going to walk into that summit, and we are going to watch them sign their own death warrant, and you are going to be the one holding the pen. Paris in October was not the romantic cliché of postcards. It was gray, slick with rain, and carried a biting chill that seeped through the layers of my cashmere coat. But inside the private suite of the Dior boutique on Avenue Montaigne, the atmosphere was warm, scented with jasmine, and terrified. The terror was radiating from the sales assistants, who were scrambling to appease the man sitting on the velvet sofa, sipping espresso with the air of a monarch deciding which subjects to execute. No, Sterling said, barely glancing at the beige cocktail dress I had just stepped out in. It is safe. It is boring. It looks like something a marketing director would wear to a shareholder meeting. I am a marketing director, I pointed out, smoothing the fabric over my hips. And beige is professional. Tonight, you are not a marketing director, Sterling corrected, setting his cup down on the saucer with a sharp clink. Tonight, you are Mrs. Sterling Blackwood. You are the woman who rose from the ashes of a public humiliation to marry a billionaire. You do not wear beige, you take revenge. He stood up and walked to the rack of gowns that had been pulled from the archives. His fingers, long and elegant, skimmed over silk and tulle before stopping at a garment that looked less like a dress and more like a weapon. It was midnight blue velvet. It was strapless, with a slit that ran dangerously high up the thigh and a corset structure that promised to rearrange my internal organs. Try this, he commanded. 10 minutes later, I stood in front of the three-way mirror, breathless. The dress didn't just fit. It transformed me. The dark velvet made my skin look like porcelain. The cut accentuated curves I usually hid under oversized blazers. I didn't look like Cassandra, the diligent employee. I looked like a femme fatale from a noir film who had just buried her third husband. Sterling stepped up behind me. His eyes met mine in the reflection. For a moment, the air in the room grew heavy, charged with that strange, vibrating tension that had been building between us since the wedding night. Perfect, he murmured, his voice rough. Where the sapphires? The event was a private art auction at the Petit Palais, a fundraiser for historical preservation attended by the kind of people who owned islands and didn't know the price of milk. The air smelled of old money, a mix of beeswax, expensive cologne, and judgment. We had barely stepped into the grand hall when I saw them. It was visceral, a physical blow to the stomach. Standing near a sculpture of a weeping angel was Liam. He looked tan, his skin bronzed from the Maldivian sun, but his eyes were darting around the room with a nervous, hungry energy. Beside him, clinging to his arm like a parasitic vine, was Jessica Thorne. She was wearing a red dress that was too bright, too loud, and she was laughing at something a waiter said. Steady, Sterling whispered, his hand tightening on my lower back. Head up. You own this room. I took a deep breath, letting the velvet act as my armor. We moved through the crowd, greeting dignitaries and tech moguls. I smiled until my face ached, playing the part of the adored wife. Then, Sterling was pulled away by the Minister of Culture for a photo opportunity. It will be 2 minutes, he promised, squeezing my hand. Stay right here. I nodded, taking a sip of champagne. I turned to admire a Monet on the wall, trying to regulate my breathing. You look expensive. Cass, the voice made my skin crawl. I turned slowly. Liam was standing there, up close. The tan couldn't hide the bags under his eyes or the fraying edge of his collar. He looked smaller than I remembered. Hello, Liam, I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The scent of his cologne, a generic brand I used to buy him for Christmas, clashed with the sophisticated atmosphere. "I tried to call you," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Blocked. Really mature." "I have nothing to say to you," I replied, turning back to the painting. "Don't be like that," he hissed, moving to block my view. "You think I wanted to leave. You think that was easy for me." I stared at him, incredulous. "You live-streamed it. Liam, you toasted to your freedom. That was a performance," he insisted, his eyes wide with a manic intensity. "I had to do it. Jessica, her father. They were pressuring me. I did it for us. Cass, I was scared. I knew I couldn't provide for you the way you deserved. I panicked. I ran away to save you from a life of mediocrity with me." He reached out, his hand hovering near my arm. "And now look at you, married to Blackwood. Please, we both know that is a sham. He is using you. Cass, he is a shark. He saw a vulnerable girl and he snapped her up to fix his stock prices. He doesn't love you. He doesn't know you like I do." The gaslighting was so blatant, so clumsy. It was almost laughable. He was trying to rewrite history, trying to make himself the martyr and Sterling the villain. 5 years of this, 5 years of him making me feel small, making me feel like I was the one who was lucky to have him. I looked at the glass of red wine in his hand, a Chateau Margaux, vintage 1996. "You are right, Liam," I said softly. He smiled, that oily, triumphant smile. "I knew it, baby. We can fix this. We can—" I didn't let him finish. With a flick of my wrist, I swiped the glass from his hand and launched the contents directly into his face. The dark red liquid exploded against his white shirt, splashing up onto his chin and dripping from his nose like blood. The sound of the glass shattering on the marble floor silenced the immediate vicinity. Jessica, who had just walked up, shrieked, "Oh my God, my dress!" Liam stood there, sputtering, purple wine soaking into the fabric of his rented tuxedo. "You are right," I repeated, my voice ringing clear in the sudden silence. "Sterling doesn't know me like you do. He knows me better, because he sees me as an equal, not a stepping stone." I stepped closer, my heels clicking on the floor, towering over him in his shock. "Thank you for leaving. Liam, thank you for running away. Because if you hadn't, I might have actually married you, and it took watching you run to realize what a real man actually looks like." "You crazy bitch," Jessica screeched, lunging forward. "I would be careful with that tone." "Miss Thorne." A deep voice cut through the air like a guillotine blade. Sterling appeared at my side. He didn't look at Liam or Jessica. He looked at me, scanning my face for tears. Finding none, he turned his gaze to the soaking wet man before us. "Mr. Vance," Sterling said. His tone was conversational, polite even, which made it infinitely more terrifying. "I see you have had an accident. A pity. Red wine is notoriously difficult to remove from cheap polyester." "It is silk," Liam shouted, his face turning a shade of crimson that matched the wine. "Your crazy wife just assaulted me." "My wife," Sterling corrected, "was merely helping you accessorize. It matches your complexion." He looked at Jessica, who was trembling with rage. "And Miss Thorne, I believe your father is looking for you. He seemed quite distressed about the plunging stock value of Vortex Corp this morning. Something about a delayed launch due to server failure. Very unfortunate." Jessica paled. She grabbed Liam's arm. "Let's go. Everyone is staring." "One moment," Sterling said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a money clip. He peeled off 500 euros and tucked them into Liam's wine-soaked breast pocket. "For the dry cleaning, and a tip for the valet." "I assume you will be leaving immediately." Liam opened his mouth to retort, but the weight of the humiliation, combined with the hostile stares of the Parisian elite surrounding us, crushed him. He turned and fled, dragging a protesting Jessica with him. I felt my knees tremble. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaky. "Are you all right?" Sterling asked low, turning his back to the room to shield me. I caused a scene, I whispered. I am sorry. The contract. Screw the contract, Sterling growled. He took my hand and raised it to his lips. That was the most magnificent thing I have ever seen. The auctioneer banged his gavel, calling for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, the final lot of the evening, The Storm by Winslow Homer. It was a painting of a turbulent dark ocean, violent and beautiful. I had admired it in the catalog earlier. Jessica had mentioned loudly that she wanted it for her father's office. Start the bidding at 200,000 euros, the auctioneer cried. 500,000, Sterling called out without hesitating. The room gasped. That was double the estimate. 600, a voice called from the back. It was a proxy bidder for Vortex. I recognized the broker. 1 million euros, Sterling said, his voice bored. Silence. Absolute silence. Sold to Mr. Sterling Blackwood for 1 million euros. Sterling turned to me. A wedding gift. It will look excellent in your office. A reminder that storms are only dangerous if you don't know how to navigate them. We returned to the hotel. The Ritz Paris, in silence. But it wasn't the cold silence of the wedding night. It was a hot, suffocating silence. When the door to our suite closed, I didn't go to the bedroom. I walked to the balcony and stood in the rain, letting the cold water mix with the heat flushing my skin. Sterling followed me. He didn't speak. He just took off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over my shoulders. I turned into him, burying my face in his chest. I didn't mean to cry, but the tears came anyway, not for Liam, but for the sheer exhaustion of being strong, for the relief of the wine hitting his shirt, for the confusion of feeling so safe in the arms of a man who was technically my employer. I hate him, I sobbed into his shirt. I hate that I wasted 5 years. You didn't waste them, Sterling murmured, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me tight against his body. You survived them. They made you who you are. He pulled back slightly, his hands cupping my face, wiping the rain and tears from my cheeks with his thumbs. The city lights of Paris reflected in his dark eyes. You were incredible tonight. Cassandra, he whispered. Fierce, terrifying, beautiful. It was acting, I whispered, though I knew it wasn't. Was it? He leaned in. The distance between us vanished. I could feel his breath on my lips. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted him to kiss me. I wanted to forget the contract, the rules, the world. I tilted my head back, my eyes fluttering shut. Sterling, I breathed. He froze. His hands tightened on my waist for a second, his body rigid against mine. Then, with a groan of frustration, he pulled away. Clause 14, he said, his voice rough, sounding like he was in physical pain. We can't. He stepped back, running a hand through his wet hair. Go to bed, Cassandra, before I do something that will ruin everything. He turned and walked back into the suite, leaving me alone on the balcony with the rain and the €1,000,000 painting waiting in the living room. I woke up with a gasp. The light streaming through the heavy curtains was gray and muted. I reached out a hand. The other side of the bed was cold, empty, panic, irrational and sharp, spiked in my chest. He left. The thought was instantaneous. Just like Liam, he got what he wanted, the humiliation of his rival, and now he is gone. I scrambled out of bed, ignoring my robe, and ran into the living room. Sterling. The room was empty. His briefcase was gone. His coat was gone. My breath hitched. I sank onto the plush carpet, hugging my knees. Stupid. I berated myself. Stupid to think this was real. It is a contract. A deal. Nothing more. The door clicked open. I flinched. Looking up, Sterling walked in. He was holding a paper bag from a local boulangerie and 2 cups of coffee. He stopped when he saw me on the floor. My hair wild, my eyes wide with terror. Cassandra. He dropped the bags on the table and crossed the room in 2 strides. He knelt in front of me. What is wrong? Are you hurt? You were gone, I whispered, my voice breaking. I woke up and you were gone. You thought I left you, he finished, his expression softening into something profound and sad. Everyone leaves, I said. I am not everyone, Sterling said fiercely. He took my hands in his. I went to get croissants. The ones from the hotel are trash. I wanted you to have the almond ones from the place on Rue Claire. He sat back on his heels, still holding my hands. I am not going anywhere. Cassandra, I signed a contract. Remember, and Blackwoods never break a contract. Is that all it is? I asked, searching his face. A contract? Sterling looked at me for a long time. The silence stretched, heavy with the truth we were both dancing around. 3 years ago, he said suddenly. What? 3 years ago? You interviewed for the junior marketing position. I was passing by the conference room. The door was open. He looked down at our joined hands. You were arguing with the HR director. He said your portfolio was too experimental. You told him that playing it safe was the fastest way to become obsolete. You had this fire in your eyes. I stood there for 5 minutes just listening to you fight for your ideas. My heart stopped. I remember that. I thought I blew the interview. I told them to hire you immediately, Sterling confessed. I wanted to ask you to dinner that first week, but then I saw the framed photo on your desk, you and Liam. He looked up, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs. I didn't approach you because I respected your commitment. I watched from the sidelines for 3 years. Cassandra, I watched you work harder than anyone else. I watched you tolerate a man who didn't deserve you. So no, this isn't just a contract to me. It has never been just a contract. I stared at him, the revelation rewriting my entire history at Apex Horizon. He hadn't just saved me at the wedding. He had been waiting. Why are you telling me this now? I whispered. Sterling stood up, pulling me with him. He didn't hug me. He didn't kiss me. He simply handed me a coffee cup, his fingers brushing mine. Because we have a meeting with the European distributors in 2 hours, he said, the mask of the CEO sliding back into place, though his eyes remained warm. And I want you to know that when we walk into that room to destroy Vortex, I am not doing it for the company. I am doing it for the girl in the interview room who refused to play it safe. He walked toward the table where he had laid out a thick dossier. Now, eat your croissant. We have an empire to defend. I stood there, the warmth of the coffee seeping into my hands, watching the man I had married for convenience, and for the first time, I realized that the danger wasn't Clause 14. The danger was that I was already falling in love with him, and I had absolutely no idea how to stop. The war against Vortex Corp was not fought with guns or grenades. It was fought with lines of code, shell corporations, and whispers in boardrooms. Back in Chicago, the Apex Horizon headquarters became our command center. Sterling and I fell into a rhythm that terrified our competitors and baffled our staff. We were a two-headed hydra. I provided the creative venom, the rebranding of our tech stack, the aggressive marketing campaigns that subtly mocked Vortex's glitchy launch, while Sterling provided the muscle. He moved capital with the precision of a surgeon, cutting off Vortex's supply chains and buying up the startups they needed to fix their stolen. Broken AI. It was during one of our late-night strategy sessions that I found the smoking gun. I was combing through Liam's old digital footprint. He had been careful to wipe his work email, but he had forgotten that we shared a cloud storage account for our personal photos. Buried deep in a folder labeled tax documents, I found a spreadsheet that didn't belong. Sterling, I called out. He was standing by the window of my office. He spent more time in my office than his own these days looking out at the city lights. He turned immediately. What is it? I know why he did it, I said, staring at the screen. I know why he needed Jessica Thorne. It wasn't just ambition, it was survival. I turned the monitor so he could see. It was a ledger of debts, gambling debts, massive ones, online poker, sports betting, underground casinos in Macau, Liam Vance, The man who scolded me for buying a $5 latte had gambled away nearly $500,000. "He is drowning," Sterling murmured, leaning over my shoulder. His scent, that crisp sandalwood, filled my senses. He stole the project to sell to Vortex to pay the VIG. He married Jessica to secure a permanent line of credit. "He is not a mastermind," I said, feeling a strange mix of disgust and pity. "He is a desperate junkie." "We can use this," Sterling said, his eyes sharpening. "We can leak this to the Thorne family. Jessica's father would cut him off before the ink on the marriage license dried. Liam would be ruined by morning." He reached for his phone, ready to make the call. "No," I said, covering his hand with mine. Sterling froze. He looked at my hand, then at my face. "No. If we expose him now, he falls," I explained, my voice steady. "But he falls as a victim of his own vice. It is too easy. He goes to rehab. He plays the sympathy card. I don't want him to just fall, Sterling. I want him to climb." I stood up, pacing the room. "I want him to think he is winning. I want him to think he has outsmarted us. I want him to leverage everything he has on the success of that stolen project, and then, when he is standing at the very top, looking down on everyone, I want the ground to disappear." Sterling watched me. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was a look of pure admiration. "You are terrifying," he said softly. "I learned from the best," I replied. So we began the game of cat and mouse. I logged into the old cloud account and planted a file. It looked like a confidential internal memo from Apex, detailing a fatal flaw in our new security patch. It was a lie. Of course, a trap designed to make Liam overconfident. We watched the logs. 2 hours later, the file was accessed from an IP address in the Vortex building. Liam had taken the bait, as the weeks turned into a month. The lines between our fake marriage and our real partnership began to blur. We spent 18 hours a day together. We ate takeout on the floor of the penthouse living room. Surrounded by blueprints, we argued over font choices and stock options. I learned that Sterling Blackwood, the man the world thought was made of ice, was actually incredibly lonely. One Tuesday night, a torrential downpour hit Chicago. We were in the back of the Rolls-Royce, heading home from a gala, when the car sputtered and died. The driver, a frantic young man named Kevin, apologized profusely as he stepped out into the rain to check the engine. "It is the alternator," Sterling said, looking out the window. "We are stuck. There is a jazz bar right there." I pointed to a neon sign flickering through the rain. The Blue Note. "We can wait inside." We made a run for it. Sterling took off his tuxedo jacket and held it over my head, shielding me from the downpour while his expensive shirt got soaked. We burst into the club laughing, breathless and dripping wet. The place was small, smoky, and smelled of bourbon and old wood. A 3-piece band was playing a slow, mournful blues number. We sat in a booth in the corner, ordering cheap whiskey because they didn't have the single malt Sterling preferred. "My parents never listened to music," Sterling said suddenly. He was staring at the saxophone player. "The Blackwood estate was like a museum. Silence was the rule. If I laughed too loud, my governess would tell me I was being unbecoming of an heir." I looked at him, seeing the lonely boy trapped in a golden cage. "My house was the opposite," I said. "Chaos, my dad shouting at the football game, my mom blending margaritas, but I always felt unseen, like I had to scream to be heard. That is why I worked so hard. I thought if I was successful enough, if I was perfect enough, someone would finally stop and really look at me." Sterling turned his gaze from the band to me, in the dim red light of the bar. His eyes were bottomless. "I see you, Cassandra," he whispered. "I see you every day." The band switched to a slow, sultry ballad. "Dance with me," Sterling said. "Clause 14, I reminded him, though my heart was hammering. "Clause 14 bans romantic attachment," Sterling countered, standing up and offering his hand. It says nothing about dancing to keep warm. I took his hand. He pulled me onto the tiny dance floor. There were only a few other couples, swaying in the dark. Sterling pulled me close, too close. His hand settled on the small of my back, burning through the thin silk of my dress. My hands rested on his shoulders. We moved together, not with the practiced stiffness of the wedding dance, but with a fluid, natural ease that felt dangerous. I rested my head against his chest. I could hear his heart beating. It was fast as mine. "You are doing a dangerous thing, Mrs. Blackwood," he murmured into my hair. "What is that?" "You are making me forget that this is a game." I lifted my head to look at him. His lips were inches from mine. The air between us crackled with electricity. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It wasn't just a partnership. It was a hunger that terrified me. "Maybe I want to forget too," I whispered. He leaned in. I closed my eyes. "Sir, ma'am." We sprang apart. Kevin, the driver, was standing at the door, dripping wet. "The tow truck is here. Another car is on the way." The spell broke, but the tension remained, trailing us back to the penthouse like a ghost. The next challenge came in the form of Eleanor Blackwood. Sterling's mother arrived unannounced 3 days later. She was a woman made of steel and pearls, walking into the penthouse with the air of a health inspector visiting a slaughterhouse. "So," Eleanor said, sitting on the white sofa and looking at me as if I were a stain on the upholstery. "This is the girl. This is my wife." "Mother," Sterling said, his voice hard. He stood beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder. "A marketing girl," Eleanor scoffed. "I suppose it makes sense. You needed a distraction from the board, and she needed, well, clearly she needed money." I felt Sterling tense. I knew he was about to defend me, to say something that would cause a rift. I stepped forward, moving out from under his hand. I poured a cup of tea and set it down in front of her with a sharp clatter. "I didn't need money, Mrs. Blackwood," I said, my voice cool and professional. "I make 6 figures on my own merit, and I didn't need a distraction. I needed a partner who respected my intelligence, something your son does quite well." Eleanor stared at me. "You have a sharp tongue." "I have a spine," I corrected. "I know you think I'm a gold digger. You are welcome to think that. But while you are judging my pedigree, I am helping your son double the company's valuation. So you can either respect me as the woman who is securing your family's legacy, or you can drink your tea in silence. It is your choice." Sterling looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. She studied me for a long, minionizing minute. Then, remarkably, she picked up the tea. "At least you are not boring," she said dryly. "The last one he dated cried when I criticized her shoes." She looked at Sterling. "She will do it." When she left, Sterling grabbed me by the waist and spun me around. "I have never seen anyone talk to her like that and survive. I think you are the first person she has respected in 20 years. "I told you," I laughed, breathless. "I am done being small. We were high on victory. We were winning the corporate war. We were winning the family war. We were unstoppable. But we got careless. Liam was desperate. The false information I had fed him was leading Vortex down a rabbit hole of expensive errors. But he was starting to realize something was wrong. He knew he couldn't beat us in business, so he decided to attack the only weak point we had left, the marriage itself. He hired a private investigator, a sleazy man with a telephoto lens, who set up shop on the roof of the building opposite the Obsidian Tower. We had gotten comfortable. We stopped closing the heavy blackout curtains in the living room. We stopped being paranoid. And one night, the camera caught what Liam needed. It caught Sterling walking me to my room, the guest room. It caught him kissing me on the forehead. A chaste, gentle gesture, and then walking down the hall to the master bedroom. It caught the separate doors closing. 2 days later, the headline hit, "The Sham Billionaire. Photos reveal Blackwood couple. Sleep in separate rooms is the marriage of the century, a corporate fraud." The notification woke me up at 6 in the morning. By 7, the stock had plummeted 12%. The board was calling for an emergency vote of no confidence. I ran into the living room. Sterling was already there, staring at the tablet. He was pale. "They know," I whispered, clutching my robe. "Sterling, they know. The contract. If the board finds out it is fake, you lose the inheritance. You lose the company." "They have photos," Sterling said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Proof that we don't share a bed. Proof that it is a business arrangement." "We can deny it," I said frantically. We can say I was sick. We can say you snore. Nobody will believe that," Sterling said. "The narrative has shifted. Liam has spun it perfectly. He is the victim of a corporate takeover disguised as a romance. We look like liars, manipulators." My phone rang. It was my mother, crying. The press was camped on her lawn. "I ruined it," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "I should have closed the curtains. I should have—" "Stop," Sterling commanded. He stood up and walked over to me. He took my face in his hands. He didn't look defeated. He looked determined, a reckless, dangerous determination. "We are not going to apologize," he said, "and we are not going to deny it." "Then what are we going to do?" I asked. "They want proof that we are a real couple. Sterling, real couples sleep in the same bed. Real couples have intimacy. We can't fake that for the cameras anymore." Sterling's thumbs brushed my cheekbones. He looked deep into my eyes, and I saw the walls of the last month crumbling down. "Then we stop faking," he whispered. "What? We make the lie true." Sterling said, "We go out there, and we don't just act like we are in love. We give them something they can't question." "How?" I breathed. Sterling leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. "We invite Vanity Fair into our home for an exclusive. We open the doors, and tonight I move my things into the guest room, or you move yours into mine." "Sterling," I warned, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "That breaks the contract." "Then let's burn the damn contract," he growled, "because I am tired of pretending I don't want to tear the world apart for you. Are you with me?" I looked at the man who had saved me, the man who danced with me in a dive bar, the man who let me fight his mother. "Burn it," I whispered. The sound of a news helicopter hovering over the obsidian tower creates a specific frequency of vibration. It is a low, thrumming dread that rattles the glass of the executive windows and settles deep in your bones. Down below, 20 stories down, the streets were choked with vans, satellite dishes, and a sea of reporters hungry for the carcass of our marriage. "The board is convening in 10 minutes, I said, pacing the length of Sterling's office. "They are going to ask for your resignation. Sterling, they are citing the morality clause. Conduct unbecoming of a CEO. They are saying you defrauded the shareholders by manufacturing a marriage to secure the inheritance." Sterling was sitting at his desk, staring at the muted television screens that lined the far wall. Every single channel was running the photos. Me, walking into the guest room. Him, walking into the master suite. The caption, "The billion-dollar lie." "Let them convene," Sterling said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He was flipping a silver coin over his knuckles, back and forth. "You are not listening to me." I slammed my hands down on his desk. "This isn't a bad quarter. This isn't a failed product launch. This is your legacy. If they vote you out, you lose Apex. You lose everything your grandfather built." I took a shaky breath, the solution forming in my mind like a bitter pill. "I called my lawyer this morning. I have the papers drafted." Sterling stopped the coin. He looked up slowly. "What papers?" "A divorce filing," I said, my voice trembling. "We can spin this. I will say I deceived you. I will say I was the one who pushed for the separate rooms because I was still getting over Liam. We paint you as the patient, victimized husband. I take the fall. I leave. The board keeps you because you were duped, not complicit." The silence that followed was absolute. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Sterling stood up. He walked around the desk slowly, stalking toward me like a predator cornering prey. He stopped inches from me, his eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. "You think I am that cheap?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "It is strategic," I argued, tears stinging my eyes. "It saves the company." "To hell with the company," Sterling roared, the sound echoing off the glass walls. "You think I would let you walk out there and destroy your reputation to save my chair? You think I would let you paint yourself as a villain so I can keep my title? Who do you think I am? Cassandra Liam." The name hit me like a physical blow. "I am trying to protect you," I whispered. "And I am telling you that I do not need protection," Sterling snapped. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip bruising. "We are in this together. We burn together, or we rise together. But you never, ever suggest leaving me again. Do you understand?" I looked at him, at the raw, unfiltered possession in his eyes. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Understood." "Good." He released me and adjusted his cuffs, the mask of the CEO sliding back into place. "Now, dry your eyes. We have a press conference to host." The atrium of the Obsidian Tower was packed. Flashbulbs went off like strobe lights as we walked onto the stage. Hand in hand, the noise was deafening. Questions were shouted from every direction. "Is it fake? Did you sleep together? Is he paying you?" Sterling raised one hand. The room fell silent. He didn't smile. He didn't look charming. He looked lethal. "There have been accusations," Sterling began, his voice amplified through the speakers, "that my marriage to Cassandra Blackwood is a sham, a business arrangement designed to bypass the stipulations of a trust fund." He looked at the camera, breaking the fourth wall. "I value privacy. I believe that what happens between a husband and wife behind closed doors belongs to them. However, when my wife's integrity is questioned, I make exceptions." He pointed to the massive screen behind us. "Roll the tape." I held my breath. I didn't know what he was going to show. The screen flickered to life. It was black and white security footage from inside the penthouse. The first clip was from 3 weeks ago. It was late. I was asleep on the sofa, surrounded by blueprints. Sterling walked into the frame. He didn't wake me. He gently took the papers from my lap, covered me with a blanket, and stood there for a full minute just watching me sleep. He brushed hair off my forehead with a tenderness that made the reporters gasp. The second clip was in the kitchen. We were cooking or trying to. I threw flour at him. He laughed a genuine, head-thrown-back laugh that the public had never seen. He grabbed me and kissed my nose. Then came the final clip. It was dated last night. We were on the terrace garden of the penthouse, under the city lights. It was right after we had agreed to burn the contract. The audio was grainy, but the image was clear. Sterling was kneeling, not on one knee like a theatrical performance, but kneeling in front of my chair, holding my hands. "I am tired of pretending." The audio picked up his voice, faint but clear. "I want this to be real. I want you to be real, on screen." I leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't a showy kiss. It was desperate. Real. The screen went black. The silence in the atrium was different now. It wasn't hostile. It was stunned. Sterling squeezed my hand. "Cassandra." I stepped up to the microphone. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. 3 months ago," I said, looking out at the sea of lenses, "I stood at an altar and watched the man I thought I loved leave me for a better offer. I was humiliated, broken." I paused, letting the emotion resonate. "We live in a world that loves a scandal. You love the idea that a powerful man like Sterling Blackwood must have an ulterior motive. You love the idea that a woman like me is just a pawn. But the truth is much simpler and much more terrifying." I looked directly at the camera I knew was broadcasting to every news station. Sometimes, you have to meet the wrong person to recognize the right one. I spent 5 years shrinking myself to fit into a box that was too small. And yes, there are ghosts from my past who are angry that I finally broke free. There are people sending drones to my window, and leaking photos because they cannot stand to see me happy. They want to prove that I am still that abandoned girl. I turned to look at Sterling. But I am not abandoned. I found the person who sees me. And if sleeping in separate rooms occasionally because we are two exhausted workaholics building an empire makes us a fake couple, then I suppose we are guilty of being human. But do not mistake exhaustion for a lack of love. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. We were winning. We had the narrative. But Sterling wasn't done. He stepped back to the mic, placing a protective hand on the small of my back. "There is one more reason we have been keeping separate rooms," Sterling said, "and it is the reason we have been so protective of our privacy lately." I frowned slightly. This wasn't in the script. Sterling looked at me, a soft, apologetic smile playing on his lips. Then he looked back at the crowd. "We wanted to wait until the second trimester to share the news," he announced, his voice beaming with pride. "But given the circumstances, we want to set the record straight. Cassandra is pregnant." The room exploded. I froze. My mouth fell open slightly before I snapped it shut. Pregnant. "Oh my God," a reporter screamed. "Congratulations. Mr. Blackwood, is it a boy or a girl?" "Mrs. Blackwood, how are you feeling?" Sterling pulled me into his side, shielding me from the onslaught. "She is tired," he said smoothly, "which is why we request you respect our privacy as we prepare for this new chapter." He guided me off the stage before I could say a word. The flashbulbs were blinding, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Pregnant. He had told the world I was pregnant. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, deadly silent. Sterling was typing on his phone, monitoring the stock price, which was undoubtedly skyrocketing. I stared out the window, watching the city blur by, my hands clenched in my lap. When we walked into the apartment, the door had barely clicked shut before I spun around. "Are you insane?" I hissed. Sterling tossed his phone onto the sofa and loosened his tie. "It worked. Look at the news. The vote of no confidence has been canceled. The stock is up 8%. The fake marriage narrative is dead. Nobody questions a baby." "There is no baby," I shouted, throwing my purse onto the floor. "You lied. Sterling. You lied to the entire world. What happens in 9 months? Do we buy a baby? Do I wear a pillow? How do we get out of this?" "We cross that bridge when we get there," Sterling said dismissively. Walking toward the bar, "We can say we lost it. A miscarriage gains even more sympathy." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "You are disgusting. You are talking about a fake dead baby to boost your approval ratings. Is everything a game to you? Am I just a game piece?" Sterling slammed the whiskey decanter down. Glass shattered. He turned to face me, his chest heaving. The cool, calculated facade was gone. In its place was something raw and jagged. "You think I want to lie?" he shouted back. "You think I enjoyed standing there and inventing a child? I did it because I was losing you. The board was going to force us to annul the marriage. They were going to separate us." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, grabbing my arms. I panicked. "Cassandra." For the first time in my life, I didn't calculate. I just panicked. "Why?" I demanded, tears streaming down my face. "Why would you panic over a contract?" "Because I wish it were true," Sterling yelled. The words hung in the air, vibrating between us. I stopped breathing. "What?" Sterling stared at me, his eyes dark and wild. "I wish it were true," he repeated, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "When I said those words, when I imagined it, I wanted it. I want a life with you. I want a child with you. I want everything." He let go of my arms and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I am in love with you, Cassandra. I have been in love with you since the moment you threw wine in Liam's face, probably long before that, and the thought of you leaving, of this ending." He couldn't finish the sentence. I looked at him. This man who controlled billions of dollars, who made nations tremble, looked terrified. He looked like he was waiting for me to shatter him. I didn't say a word. I crossed the distance between us. I grabbed the lapels of his suit jacket and yanked him down. When our lips met, it wasn't like a wedding kiss. It wasn't like the tentative moments in Paris. It was a collision. It was months of repressed longing, fear, and adrenaline exploding all at once. Sterling groaned, a low guttural sound in his throat. His arms wrapped around my waist. Lifting me off the ground, I wrapped my legs around him, burying my hands in his hair. "Clause 14, he gasped against my mouth, carrying me toward the bedroom. "We are breaking Clause 14. I am burning the contract," I whispered back, biting his lower lip. "Shut up and take me to bed." He kicked the bedroom door open. We didn't make it to bed. He pressed me against the wall, his hands frantic, desperate. Buttons popped. Fabric tore. There was no finesse, no careful seduction. It was a raw need. "You are mine," he murmured against my neck, sending shivers down my spine. "Tell me you are mine." "I am yours," I sobbed. "I have always been yours." The rest of the night was a blur of skin, heat, and whispers in the dark. We made love with the desperation of two people who had almost lost everything. We stripped away the titles, the money, the lies. There was no CEO and subordinate, no fake husband and wife, just Sterling and Cassandra. Sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains, painting stripes of gold across the sheets. I woke up slowly, my body aching in a way that felt like victory. Sterling was asleep beside me. One arm was draped over my waist, anchoring me to him. His face was buried in the pillow, his dark hair messy. He looked young, peaceful. I watched him for a long time. I remembered his confession. I wish it were true. I looked down at my flat stomach. A lie. A massive, world-altering lie that we were now trapped in. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep back in. Did he love me? Or did he love winning? Sterling Blackwood was a man who always got what he wanted. He wanted to save the company. He wanted to destroy Liam. He wanted to keep his inheritance. Was I just the ultimate trophy? Was the confession last night just another strategic move to ensure I played the part of the doting, pregnant wife? He had admitted he panicked because the board would separate us. Was that love? Or was that a fear of losing control of his assets? Sterling stirred. His eyes opened, foggy with sleep. When they focused on me, a slow, lazy smile spread across his face. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood," he rasped, reaching out to trace the line of my jaw. "Good morning," I replied. He pulled me closer, kissing my forehead. "We have a lot to talk about today. The baby announcement. We need to figure out a plan." "A plan," I repeated, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Yes," he said, closing his eyes again, pulling the duvet up. "But not yet. Stay here." I lay there in his arms, feeling the warmth of his skin, and wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I had burned the contract. Yes, but without the contract, I had no protection. I had given him everything: my body, my heart, my reputation. And if this was still just a game to him, I had already lost. The silence in the penthouse was deafening after Sterling left. He had been called away to Tokyo for an emergency negotiation with the Asian markets, a direct consequence of our fabricated pregnancy announcement, which had spooked a conservative investor group. He had not wanted to go. He had stood by the door, his hand gripping the handle of his suitcase until his knuckles turned white, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and terror. "I will be back in 48 hours, he had promised, kissing me as if he were going to war. "Kevin will drive you everywhere. Do not go anywhere without him. Do not answer unknown numbers. And for God's sake, stay inside the building as much as possible." I nodded, playing the part of the obedient wife. But 24 hours later, cabin fever had set in. I needed to go to the office. I needed to oversee the final purge of the Vortex sabotage files before the authorities started asking too many questions about why their servers melted. "Car is ready, Mrs. Blackwood," a voice crackled over the intercom. I took the elevator down to the private garage, but when the door to the black SUV opened, Kevin was not in the driver's seat. Instead, a man with a thick neck and a scar running through his eyebrow was gripping the wheel. "Where is Kevin?" I asked, hesitating with one foot on the pavement. "Kevin called in sick, ma'am," the new driver said. His voice was gravelly, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses despite the dim lighting of the garage. "Mr. Blackwood sent me. My name is Miller." It seemed plausible. Sterling had a security team the size of a small army. I climbed in, settling into the leather seat. "To Apex headquarters, please." "Yes, ma'am." The car peeled out of the garage. But 10 minutes later, I realized we were not heading toward the financial district. We were heading west, toward the industrial wastelands on the edge of the city. "Miller," I said, leaning forward, "you missed the turn. The GPS says—" The click of the door locks engaging echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. "No mistake, Mrs. Blackwood," Miller said, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. Change of plans. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I reached for the door handle. Locked. I reached for my phone. "I wouldn't do that," Miller warned. "There is a signal jammer in the trunk. No service. Sit back and enjoy the ride. You are worth a lot of money to the right person." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was targeted. We drove for 40 minutes in silence. The city skyline faded, replaced by rusting factories and overgrown lots. Finally, the car turned down a gravel road and stopped in front of a dilapidated structure. It was an old textile mill, its brick facade crumbling, the windows boarded up like bruised eyes. I recognized it immediately, and the irony made me want to vomit. 5 years ago, on our 3rd anniversary, Liam had brought me here. "I am going to buy this place," he had said, pointing at the rotting beams. "I am going to convert it into luxury lofts, and the penthouse. That will be ours. Cass, our dream home." It wasn't a dream home, it was a grave. Miller opened the door and dragged me out. "Move." He shoved me through the rusted metal doors. The interior smelled of mold, damp earth, and despair. In the center of the vast, empty room, sitting on a folding chair under a single flickering construction light, was Liam Vance. He looked unrecognizable. The polished, arrogant executive was gone. In his place was a man who hadn't slept in a week. His shirt was stained, his stubble was patchy, and his eyes were wide, rimmed with red, darting around the room as if chasing invisible flies. "You brought her," Liam whispered. Standing up, he wiped his hands on his pants. Good job. Miller, wait outside." Miller grunted and left, the heavy metal door clanging shut behind him. "Liam," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my knees. "What are you doing? This is kidnapping. This is a federal crime." "It is a rescue mission," Liam shouted, his voice cracking. He rushed toward me, stopping just inches away. He smelled of stale bourbon and sweat. "I am saving you, Cass. Can't you see that he has brainwashed you? That monster? He trapped you with a fake marriage and now this fake baby?" He laughed. A high, hysterical sound. "Jessica told me. She showed me the news. She was laughing at me. Cass. She called me a failure. She said I let the mother of the future Blackwood heir slip through my fingers. She kicked me out, canceled my credit cards. I have nothing." "That is not my fault," I said coldly. "You did that to yourself." "No." He slammed his fist against a support pillar. Dust rained down. "It is Sterling. He rigged the files. I know he did. The Vortex servers crashed because of a loop in the code you wrote. He set me up. He stole my life. Cass, he stole my money. He stole my reputation. And he stole you." He paced back and forth, running his hands through his greasy hair. "But I can fix it. I have a plan. I am going to send him a video. I am going to tell him that if he wants to see his precious wife again, he needs to transfer $50 million to an offshore account, and he needs to publicly admit that he sabotaged Vortex. He needs to give me my life back." "He won't do it," I lied. He is a businessman. Liam, he doesn't negotiate with terrorists. He will? Liam screamed, turning on me. Because you are pregnant. He won't risk his heir. Even if the marriage is fake, the baby is an asset. He cares about his legacy. He grabbed a coil of rope from the floor. Sit down. In the chair. Now. I sat. I didn't have a choice. He tied my hands behind the back of the metal chair, the rough hemp digging into my wrists. Liam, listen to me, I said, trying to switch to crisis negotiation mode. You are spiraling. If you let me go now, we can say it was a misunderstanding, but if you make that call, there is no going back. There is already no going back, he spat. Do you know what it is like to be a laughingstock? To have waitresses snicker when your card is declined? I was a king. Cass. And now I am nothing. He knelt in front of me, his face dangerously close. But we can start over, with 50 million. We can go to Rio. I forgive you. Cass, I forgive you for sleeping with him. We can raise the baby together. It will be better this way. The delusion was terrifying. He actually believed he could kidnap me and then play house. My hands were numb, but my mind was racing. I remembered something. The night we burned the contract, Sterling had been showing me the intricacies of the Blackwood family ring. It is not just jewelry, he had said, pressing a hidden catch on the underside of the setting. My grandfather was paranoid about kidnappings in the 70s. There is a GPS transponder inside the stone. Press the emerald 3 times, and it sends a distress signal directly to my private security team. I twisted my hands behind the chair. I could feel the cold metal of the ring against my palm. Liam, I said softly, distracting him. Do you really think I would go with you after you left me at the altar, after you humiliated me? I made a mistake, he pleaded, tears leaking from his eyes. I was scared, but I love you. I have always loved you. Sterling doesn't love you. He is a machine. He is incapable of love. I pressed the emerald against the metal bar of the chair. Once. He loves me more than you ever did, I said. He knows my coffee order. He knows I hate horror movies. He knows I talk in my sleep. I pressed it again, twice. He is memorizing data, Liam yelled. It is an algorithm to him. He treats me like an equal, I countered. You treated me like an accessory. I pressed it a 3rd time. A tiny, almost inaudible vibration buzzed against my finger. The beacon was lit. Now I just had to stay alive until he got here. Liam stood up, wiping his face. He pulled out a phone. I am calling him. I am going to make him pay. Wait, I said. If you want him to believe you, you need proof. You need to show him I am scared. Liam looked at me, confused. What? Untie my hands, I said. Record a video of me begging. If I am tied up, he will just call the FBI. If I am begging, he will panic. It is psychological. Liam, you know how he works? Liam hesitated. The greed and desperation warred with his suspicion. Finally, the need to win, to outsmart Sterling. One out. Fine, he muttered. But Miller is right outside. You try anything, and he breaks your legs. He walked behind me and loosened the ropes, as soon as the tension released. I brought my hands forward, rubbing my wrists. Okay, Liam said, pointing the phone at me. Cry. Beg him to save the baby. I took a deep breath. I reached into the pocket of my blazer. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have a gun. But I had something every woman in Chicago carries when she takes the subway alone. I am sorry, Liam, I whispered. Speak up, he commanded. I said, I pulled the canister out. I am sorry you are such a disappointment. I pressed the nozzle. A stream of military-grade pepper spray hit him directly in the eyes. Liam screamed. It was a sound of pure agony. He dropped the phone, clawing at his face, stumbling backward. My eyes. You bitch, my eyes. I didn't wait. I kicked the chair toward him, sending him sprawling into the dirt, and ran for the side exit. I knew the layout of this building. I had memorized the blueprints 5 years ago when we were planning our future. I burst out the side door into the rainy afternoon. The industrial park was desolate. I could see Miller standing by the car at the front entrance, smoking. He hadn't heard the scream over the wind. I ran toward the tree line, my heels sinking into the mud. Then I heard it, a rhythmic thumping sound. It grew louder, shaking the ground beneath my feet. I looked up. A black helicopter tore through the low-hanging clouds. It didn't have news markings. It was sleek, military style, with the Apex Horizon logo painted in charcoal gray on the side. It didn't look for a landing pad. It banked sharply, hovering just feet above the muddy lot. The door slid open before the skids even touched the ground. Sterling Blackwood jumped out. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His white shirt was soaked instantly by the rain. He looked like a demon. His eyes were wild, scanning the area until they locked onto me. "Cassandra!" he roared, his voice cutting through the noise of the rotors. I ran toward him, but behind me, the door to the warehouse crashed open. Liam stumbled out, red-faced, blind, and waving a tire iron he must have grabbed from the floor. "I will kill her!" Liam shrieked, swinging the iron wildly. "If I can't have her, no one can." Miller, seeing the helicopter, realized his paycheck had just expired. He jumped into the SUV and sped off, leaving Liam alone. Sterling didn't run to me. He looked at Liam, and something in his face broke. It wasn't the calculation of a CEO. It was the primal rage of a man seeing a threat to his mate. He sprinted past me, moving faster than I thought possible. "Sterling, no!" I screamed. Liam swung the tire iron. Sterling ducked under it with the grace of a boxer and drove his shoulder into Liam's midsection. The sound of the impact was sickening. Liam folded in half. Dropping the weapon, Sterling tackled him into the mud, and then he began to hit him. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Sterling rained blows down on Liam's face, his chest, his ribs. Every punch was accompanied by a guttural snarl. "You touched her." Thud. "You dared to touch her." Thud. Liam was not fighting back. He was sobbing, trying to curl into a ball, blood mixed with the mud. "Sterling, stop." I ran over, grabbing Sterling's arm. It was like grabbing a steel piston. "You are going to kill him." "He deserves it," Sterling shouted, his eyes black with dilated pupils. He pulled his fist back for another strike. "He terrorized you. He threatened our child." "There is no child," I screamed, shaking him. "Sterling, look at me. There is no child. Don't go to prison for a lie. Look at me." Sterling froze. His fist hovered inches from Liam's ruined nose. He turned his head slowly to look at me. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead. His chest was heaving. "Cassandra," he breathed. He dropped his hand. He rolled off Liam, who was groaning in the mud, and scrambled over to me. He checked me frantically, my hands, my face, my neck. "Did he hurt you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "Did he touch you? If he touches you, I will finish it. I swear to God." "I am okay," I sobbed, the adrenaline finally crashing. "I am okay. I used the spray. I used the ring." Sterling pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my neck. He was shaking. The man who controlled markets, who stared down hostile takeovers without blinking, was shaking uncontrollably. "I was in Tokyo," he whispered into my skin. "The signal came through. I thought I was too late. I have never been so scared in my life." In the distance, sirens began to wail. The local police, alerted by the helicopter pilot, were closing in. I pulled back slightly. "Sterling, we need to be smart. He is going to say we set him up. He's going to talk about the blackmail." I reached into my bra and pulled out my phone. The screen was cracked, but the recording light was still blinking red. "I recorded everything," I said, showing him the screen. "From the moment he untied me, he confessed to the kidnapping. He confessed to the extortion. He confessed to the Vortex theft. It is all here." Sterling looked at the phone, then at the broken man in the mud. He stood up, pulling me with him. He took off his ruined shirt and wrapped it around my shivering shoulders, standing bare-chested in the rain like a barbarian king. "He is done," Sterling said, his voice returning to that deadly cold calm. "He won't just go to prison. I will make sure he rots there." The police cruisers skidded into the lot, lights flashing, officers poured out, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," they shouted at the unconscious Liam. Sterling held me tight against his side as the officers cuffed Liam and dragged him away. As they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, Liam lifted his head. His eyes were swollen shut, his face a mask of blood. "She is a liar," Liam screamed, spitting blood. "Ask her about the baby. Ask her about the contract. It is all a lie." Sterling stepped forward, shielding me. He looked at the officer in charge. "My wife is in shock," Sterling said, his authority absolute. "She needs a doctor, and that man just confessed to kidnapping a pregnant woman. I expect the charges to reflect that." The officer nodded, intimidated. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood, we will take care of it." As we walked toward the helicopter, I looked up at Sterling. "You kept the lie going," I whispered. "Even to the police." Sterling looked down at me. The rage was gone, replaced by a fierce, protective tenderness. "I told you. Cassandra," he said, lifting me into the cabin. "I protect what is mine, and from now on, that includes every single lie we have told." He climbed in beside me, wrapping a thermal blanket around us both. As the helicopter lifted off, leaving the ruins of my past behind in the mud, I leaned my head on his chest and listened to his heart slow down. Matching the rhythm of my own, we were safe, but the web of lies was tightening, and I knew that sooner or later, we would have to face the truth. The nightmare was always the same. It wasn't Liam's face I saw when I closed my eyes. It was the mud, the cold, suffocating weight of the earth pressing into my mouth, silencing me while Sterling flew away in a helicopter without looking back. I would wake up gasping, my sheets drenched in sweat, to find the real Sterling sitting in the armchair by the window, watching me. He stopped sleeping in the bed. He said he didn't want to disturb me, but I knew the truth. He was guarding me. He sat there all night, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand, his eyes scanning the perimeter of the room as if an assassin might burst through the drywall. "You are awake," he said one Tuesday at 3 a.m. His voice was rough, tired. "I am fine," I lied, sitting up and pulling the duvet tight. "Go to sleep, Sterling, please." "I can't," he replied simply. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him swinging that iron at your head." The kidnapping had ended 2 weeks ago. Liam was in a federal holding facility, denied bail. The threat was gone, but the fear had metastasized, turning our home into a fortress and our marriage into a high-security prison. Sterling's protection had morphed into suffocation. He hired 3 new bodyguards who followed me to the bathroom. He installed bulletproof glass on the penthouse windows. He vetted my emails, my calls, even my grocery orders. "I can't go to the office today," I asked the next morning, standing in the kitchen. "It is not safe," Sterling said, not looking up from his tablet. "There are still reporters, and we don't know if Liam had accomplices." "Liam acted alone, Sterling. The police confirmed it." I slammed my coffee cup down. "I am not a prisoner. I am the director of marketing. I have a team to manage." "I told them to route everything through me," Sterling said calmly. "You need to rest. You are stressed. It is bad for—" He stopped, catching himself. "Bad for the baby," I finished, my voice dripping with acid. "The imaginary baby. Are we still pretending inside our own house?" Sterling looked at me then. His eyes were shadowed, exhausted. "I am trying to keep you alive. Cassandra, why is that a crime?" "Because you are not keeping me alive," I shouted. "You are burying me. You are controlling every breath I take. I survived Liam. I survived the scandal. But I don't know if I can survive this." He didn't answer. He just stood up, put on his jacket, and walked out without a word. That afternoon, alone in the penthouse, or as alone as I could be with a guard outside the door, I went into Sterling's home office. I was looking for a distraction, a book, anything to stop the walls from closing in. I sat at his massive mahogany desk. It was cluttered with files. Sterling, usually so organized, had been letting things pile up since the incident. My elbow knocked a stack of manila folders onto the floor. I sighed and bent down to pick them up. One folder had spilled open. The label caught my eye. Project Vortex Acquisition. I froze. I knew we were at war with Vortex. But the date on the file wasn't from last month. It wasn't even from this year. It was dated 18 months ago. My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I opened the file. It was a detailed, ruthless roadmap. Step 1. Destabilize Vortex stock. Step 2. Identify weak links in the executive chain Liam Vance noted as a potential target. Step 3. Acquire controlling interest during market dip. I flipped the pages, my hands trembling. There were emails between Sterling and a corporate spy. Emails discussing Liam's gambling debts long before I knew about them. Emails discussing me. Subject: The Hawthorne Leverage, date 6 months ago, from Sterling Blackwood, to legal counsel. Miss Hawthorne is Vance's fiancée. If Vance implodes, she becomes collateral damage. However, her position at Apex makes her valuable. If we can secure her loyalty post-scandal, she becomes the perfect face for the rebranding. She is the emotional hook we need to bury Vortex. Keep an eye on the situation. If Vance runs, be prepared to step in. I dropped the file. The room spun. The air felt thin, unbreathable. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't fate. It wasn't a knight in shining armor saving a damsel. It was a merger. He had watched Liam for months, not to protect the company, but to wait for the crash. He knew Liam would run. He probably banked on it, and he had positioned himself to catch me. Not because he loved me, but because I was the emotional hook. I was the PR strategy. And the wedding, the speech about burning the contract. The confession of love. Just another negotiation tactic to keep the asset happy. I felt sick, physically sick. The memories of his tenderness, his kisses, the way he looked at me in the rain, they all twisted into something grotesque. It was all part of the acquisition plan. I heard the front door open. "Cassandra," Sterling's voice called out. "I brought dinner. That Italian place you like." I stood up, clutching the file to my chest like a shield. I walked out into the living room. Sterling was setting bags on the counter. He looked up, saw my face, and his smile died. Then he saw the folder in my hands. He went very still. "You went through my desk," he said quietly. 18 months, I whispered. "You have been planning to buy Vortex for 18 months. "Yes," Sterling said. He didn't deny it. He didn't look guilty. He looked resigned. "You knew about Liam's debts a year ago," I continued, my voice shaking. "You noted him as a weak link. You knew he was going to destroy me." "I suspected," Sterling corrected. "And me." I held up the email. "The Hawthorne Leverage. Is that what I am?" "Sterling Leverage. Am I just a line item in your budget?" Sterling walked around the counter. "Cassandra, put the file down. You are reading it out of context. That was business. Before us. Before what?" I laughed. A harsh, broken sound. "Before you realized I was better at playing the wife than you expected. Before you realized you could use a fake pregnancy to boost the stock another 8%. "That is not fair," Sterling snapped. "I married you to save you." "Did you—" I stepped closer, challenging him. "Or did you marry me because it was the perfect opportunity to execute step 3 of your plan? You got the girl. You got the sympathy vote. And you got the perfect weapon to destroy Vortex. It is brilliant. Sterling, truly. I am just mad I didn't see it sooner." I threw the file at him. Papers scattered across the floor like dead leaves. "Tell me," I demanded, tears finally spilling over. "Tell me that you didn't think about the merger when you walked down that aisle. Tell me that when you kissed me in the rain, You weren't calculating how much it would be worth to the shareholders. Sterling looked at me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The conflict in his eyes was agonizing. He was a man of logic, of truth, and he couldn't lie. I am a businessman. Cassandra, he said finally, his voice devoid of emotion. I always look for the opportunity. When Liam left, I saw a way to win everything: the company, the competitor, and you. Me, I repeated dully. As an acquisition. As a partner, Sterling argued, stepping forward. Yes, it started as a strategy. But what we have now, what I feel. What you feel is ownership, I screamed. That is why you lock me in here. That is why you track me. You are not protecting your wife. You are protecting your assets. The truth of it hung in the air. Sterling flinched as if I had slapped him. Is that what you think? That is what the evidence says, I whispered. And you taught me to always trust the data. I walked past him to the bedroom. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take the clothes he bought me. I didn't take the jewels. I took off the massive blackwood ring. I placed it on the nightstand next to the divorce papers I had printed out that morning, the ones I had hesitated to sign. I signed them now. I walked back out. Sterling was standing among the scattered papers, looking like a statue amidst ruins. I am leaving, I said. Cassandra, he warned, his voice low. Don't do this. You are upset. You are not thinking clearly. I am thinking clearly for the first time in months, I said. I am done being a pawn. Sterling, I am done being leveraged. I want to be loved for who I am, not for what I can do for your portfolio. I do love you, he said. It sounded like a plea. Do you? I looked at him sadly. Or do you just hate losing? I opened the door. The bodyguard started to block me. Let her go, Sterling ordered. His voice was dead. I walked out. I took the elevator down. I walked out of the obsidian tower and hailed a cab. I didn't look back. Sterling stood in the penthouse. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. He looked at the scattered papers. The Hawthorne leverage. He picked up the page. He remembered writing it. He remembered thinking he was so smart, so tactical. He had thought he could control everything. He had thought he could win the game of business and the game of love simultaneously. He walked to the window and watched the yellow cab disappear into the traffic. He had won. Vortex was practically his. Apex stock was at an all-time high. Liam was in jail. He had won every battle, but as he looked at the empty apartment, he realized he had lost the war. I moved back into my parents' house in the suburbs. My mother asked no questions. She just made up my old bed and put a cup of tea on the nightstand. The days turned into weeks. I went through the motions. I couldn't go back to Apex. The conflict of interest was too painful. I resigned via email. I spent my days gardening, reading books I didn't absorb, and staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring. It didn't. 1 week has passed. Then 2, then 3. I told myself it was better this way. I told myself I was free. But freedom felt remarkably like drowning. Every time a car drove past, my heart jumped, hoping it was a black Rolls Royce. Every time the news came on, I searched for his face. He looked terrible. In the press conferences, Sterling was gaunt. He wasn't the ruthless machine anymore. He looked like a ghost haunting his own suit. He stopped giving interviews. The stock began to wobble. Rumors of his health circulating. You miss him, my mother said one evening, peeling potatoes at the counter. I miss the lie, I corrected, staring at the rain against the kitchen window. I miss the version of him I thought existed. Cassie, my mother sighed. Your father is a stubborn man. He once didn't talk to me for a week because I threw away his favorite ugly chair, but he came back, because love is stronger than pride. Sterling has no pride, I said bitterly. He has ambition, and I walked away. I am a bad investment now. Or maybe, my mother said softly, he is giving you exactly what you asked for. You said he was controlling. Maybe his silence is the only way he knows how to respect your freedom. I froze. I thought about the guards, the tracking, the way he had suffocated me, and now, silence. Absolute, painful silence. Was he waiting? Or had he moved on to the next acquisition? A month passed. The divorce papers sat on my desk. Unsigned by him. My lawyer said he wasn't responding to emails. I woke up one morning feeling nauseous. I chalked it up to stress. I skipped breakfast, but the nausea persisted the next day, and the next. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the little plastic stick in my hand, 2 pink lines. The irony was so sharp it felt like a knife in my gut. The fake baby. The lie we had told the world to save the company. The lie that had trapped us. It wasn't a lie anymore. I was pregnant. For real. I pressed my hand to my stomach. A baby. Sterling's baby. I should have been terrified. I should have been angry. But as I sat there on the cold tile, a sob ripped through my chest. Not of fear, but of longing. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to see his face. I wanted to know if the man who panicked over a fake pregnancy would crumble over a real one. But I couldn't call him. Not now. If I told him, he would come back. He would take care of me. He would marry me again. But I would never know if he did it for me or for the heir. I would be the Hawthorne leverage all over again. I stood up and flushed the test. I had to do this alone. The morning sun over my parents' suburban garden was too bright, too cheerful for the nausea rolling in my stomach. I sat on the edge of the porcelain bathtub, the cold creeping into my legs, staring at the small plastic stick that had just rewritten my entire reality. Positive, 2 pink lines, unmistakable, irreversible. I pressed a hand to my flat stomach. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, tasting like bile. The world had a twisted sense of humor. Sterling and I had stood on a stage and lied to millions of people about a baby to save a stock price. We had invented a life to protect an empire, and now, in the silence of my childhood home, with no cameras and no contracts, the lie had become flesh and blood. I flushed the test and buried the packaging deep in the bottom of the trash can. I could not tell my mother. If she knew, she would call Sterling. And if Sterling knew... My mind replayed the file I had found, the Hawthorne leverage. If he knew I was carrying his heir, he would descend upon this house with an army of lawyers. He would take care of me. Yes, he would probably wrap me in cotton and diamonds, but I would never know if he was holding me or holding his asset. I would never know if the love in his eyes was for me or for the legacy growing inside me. I decided then and there I would be a single mother. I had my savings. I had my talent. I could go to the West Coast, start over, build something of my own. The doorbell rang, cutting through my plans. "Cassie," my mother called from the kitchen. "There is a courier here for you. He says it requires a signature." My heart jumped. Divorce papers. It had been a month. It was time. I walked to the front door, steeling myself. The courier was a young man holding a heavy, leather-bound box, not a manila envelope. "Cassandra Blackwood?" he asked. I flinched at the name. Yes, I signed the digital pad. He handed me the box. It was heavy, expensive, embossed with the seal of Sterling's personal law firm. I took it to the living room and sat on the floral sofa. My mother hovered in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her eyes filled with worry. "I am fine, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I just need a minute." She nodded and retreated, leaving me alone with the last remnants of my marriage. I opened the box. On top lay a thick stack of legal documents. I expected to see a settlement agreement. I expected to see a non-disclosure agreement. Instead, the title page read, "Transfer of Ownership Vortex Corporation." I blinked. I read it again. Sterling Blackwood, hereby transfer 100% of the controlling interest, assets, and intellectual property of the entity known as Vortex Corporation to Cassandra Hawthorne, to be her sole and separate property, effective immediately. I flipped through the pages. My hands were shaking. He wasn't divorcing me. He was giving me the company. He was giving me the enemy. He had completed the hostile takeover we had planned, the one I accused him of using me for, and he had signed it all over to me. Under the legal documents was a smaller envelope and a silver USB drive. I opened the envelope. It was a handwritten letter. Sterling's handwriting was sharp, jagged, the script of a man who thought faster than he wrote. Cassandra. You were right about the file. I did write it. I did view Liam as a weak link, and I did see you as the key to destroying him. I am a businessman. I have spent my entire life turning people into numbers and emotions into variables. It is the only language I know. But you were wrong about the timeline. I didn't write that file to use you. I wrote it to justify you. My lawyers told me I was obsessed. My board told me I was distracted. They wanted to know why I spent 3 years refusing to crush a competitor like Vortex. I couldn't tell them that I was hesitating because the marketing director of Apex was dating the enemy, and I didn't want to hurt her. I couldn't tell them that I was waiting for him to mess up so I could step in. Not to acquire a company, but to acquire a chance to be near you. So I called you leverage. I called you an asset. I used their language to protect my irrational, illogical need to keep you safe. I bought Vortex for you. Cassandra, not to merge it with Apex. I destroyed it, stripped it of its corruption, and now I am giving it to you. It is yours. You can burn it. You can rebuild it. You can use it to prove to the world that you are not anyone's leverage. You are the owner. I am not asking you to come back. I forfeited that right when I let you feel like a pawn. But please, watch the drive. It is the only defense I have left. Yours, Sterling. I wiped a tear from the paper, smearing the ink. I reached for my laptop and plugged in the USB drive. There was a single folder labeled Project C. I clicked the first video file. The timestamp was dated 3 years ago. The screen filled with Sterling's face. He was in his office, late at night. He looked younger, less hardened. He was adjusting the camera on his laptop. Log entry 1, he said to the camera. We interviewed a candidate today for the junior marketing role, Cassandra Hawthorne. She told HR that our branding was soulless. I should have fired her. Instead, I hired her on the spot. He paused, looking away from the lens, a small, confused smile playing on his lips. She was wearing a yellow scarf. I hate yellow, but on her, it looked like sunshine. I clicked the next video. 6 months later. She is dating Vance, Sterling said to the camera, his voice flat. He poured a drink. The man is an idiot. He interrupted her 3 times during the presentation today. I wanted to throw him out of the window, but she looks at him with such hope. I can't take that away from her. I just have to wait. Another video. 1 year ago. I drafted the acquisition plan today, Sterling said. He looked exhausted. I told the lawyers it is a strategic move to secure the Hawthorne asset. If I don't make it a business case, the board won't let me intervene when Vance inevitably crashes. I hate this. I hate reducing her to a file. But if it keeps her within my reach, I will write whatever they want. I watched them all. Dozens of entries. Sterling pacing his office when I was sick. Sterling was angry when Liam missed my birthday. Sterling was terrified the night of the kidnapping. Recording a log before he got on the helicopter. Log entry. The kidnapping. He looks broken. There is blood on his shirt. Liam's blood. I almost lost her, he whispered, staring into the lens. I don't care about the company. I don't care about the legacy. If she hadn't come out of that warehouse, I would have burned the whole world down, and she thinks it is a game. She thinks I am playing a game. He put his head in his hands. I don't know how to tell her. I don't know how to be a husband. I only know how to be a CEO. And that is going to lose her. The screen went black. I sat in the silence of my living room, the tears flowing freely now. I had called him cold. I had called him calculating. And I was right. He was calculating. He had calculated every single move for 3 years to ensure that when I finally fell, he would be there to catch me. He hadn't treated me like an asset because he didn't love me. He treated me like an asset because that was the most valuable thing in his world, and he didn't know how to treat me as anything less than precious. He was clumsy. He was emotionally stunted. He was an idiot who spoke in contracts, but he was my idiot. I looked at the time. It was Tuesday. The notification on my phone calendar popped up. Liam Vance sentencing hearing, 2:00 p.m. I stood up. I wiped my face. I wasn't going to hide anymore. The federal courthouse was a fortress of gray stone and grim faces. The air inside smelled of floor wax and misery. I walked into the courtroom wearing the midnight blue velvet dress Sterling had bought me in Paris. It was out of place for a Tuesday afternoon court session, but I didn't care. I needed the armor. The room was packed. Reporters, former employees of Vortex, curious onlookers. When I walked down the aisle, the murmurs started, but I ignored them. I took my seat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table. Liam was brought in. He looked small. The swagger was gone. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. His nose, which Sterling had broken, was crooked. When he saw me, he flinched. He looked at the floor. Unable to meet my eyes, the judge was a stern woman with no patience for white-collar theatrics. The proceedings were swift. Liam's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, citing emotional distress and a crime of passion. The judge wasn't having it. "Mr. Vance," she said, looking over her glasses, "you kidnapped a woman. You extorted a business rival. You embezzled millions. This was not passion. This was greed." I tuned out the legal jargon. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. I turned around slowly. He was there. I didn't feel joy. I just felt done. The ghost of the past was gone. I turned back to the rear of the courtroom. The seat in the back row was empty. Sterling had slipped out the moment the sentence was read. Panic seized me. He was leaving. He respected my wish for distance so much that he was going to walk away and never come back. I grabbed my purse and ran. "Mrs. Blackwood," a reporter shouted as I burst through the double doors. "Comment on the sentencing." "Move," I shouted, pushing past them. I ran down the marble steps, my heels clicking frantically. I scanned the parking lot. It was raining again. A light. Gray drizzle that slicked the pavement. I saw him. He was walking toward his black Rolls-Royce, parked in the far corner. He was walking slowly, his head down, his shoulders hunched against the rain. He looked like the loneliest man in the world. "Sterling," I screamed. The wind took my voice. He didn't hear me. He reached for the door handle. I didn't think. I acted. I reached into my purse and grabbed the keys to my father's Ford sedan that I had driven here. "Sterling Blackwood," I yelled with everything I had. He froze. He turned around slowly. I was 20 yards away. I reared back and threw the keys. They arced through the rain, glittering like silver coins. Sterling's reflexes were still sharp. He reached out and caught them instinctively. He looked at the cheap plastic fob in his hand, then up at me. Confusion written all over his face. I walked toward him. I didn't run. I walked with purpose. "You gave me a company," I said when I was close enough that I didn't have to shout. "So I am giving you a ride." Sterling looked at the keys, then at me. "Cassandra, I don't understand. I thought you wanted—" "I read the letter," I interrupted him. I stopped 3 feet away. "I watched the videos." His face paled. "I see." He looked down at his shoes. "Then you know. I am sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how—" "You are an idiot," I said softly. He looked up, startled. "Excuse me. You are a genius billionaire who can acquire multinational corporations in his sleep. But you are an emotional idiot," I clarified, stepping closer. "You wrote a business plan to fall in love. Sterling, who does that—" "I wanted to be sure," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I can't lose. Cassandra, I don't know how to lose, and with you, the stakes were too high. You lost the moment you let me walk out that door," I said. "But the thing about the stock market, Sterling, is that it rebounds." I reached out and took his hand. It was cold and wet from the rain. I laced my fingers through his. feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that had held me up when my world collapsed. "I don't want Vortex," I said. "I don't want to be a CEO. I want my husband." Sterling stared at me, hope warring with disbelief in his eyes. "Are you sure I am controlling? I am paranoid." "I come with baggage." "I know," I said, "and I am stubborn, and I have a temper, and we are both liars." I stepped into his space, placing my other hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating frantically. "But you see me," I whispered. "You saw me when I was invisible. You loved me when I was broken, and I love you. Sterling, not the CEO, not the savior. You, the man who eats almond croissants and records video diaries because he is too scared to say hello." Sterling let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He dropped the keys and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me off my feet. He buried his face in my neck, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. "I love you," he murmured into my skin, his voice thick with emotion. "God, I love you so much. I thought I died when you left. I have been a corpse walking around for a month." "I missed you too," I cried, clinging to him. "Take me home, Sterling." He pulled back, cupping my face, searching my eyes. "To the penthouse. I can have the security removed. I can take down the bulletproof glass." "No," I smiled through my tears. "Leave the glass. We might need it to keep the world out." I leaned up and kissed him. It tasted of rain and redemption. It was a promise. "Drive me home," I whispered against his lips. "Our home." Sterling picked up the keys from the wet pavement. He looked at my father's beat-up Ford sedan, then at his $1 million Rolls-Royce. "We are taking the Ford," he decided with a grin that lit up the gray afternoon. "It has character." He opened the passenger door for me, treating the rusted sedan like a royal carriage. As he walked around to the driver's side, I placed a hand on my stomach. I had him back. I had the truth. And in a few minutes, when we were safe inside the quiet intimacy of the car, I would give him the final piece of the puzzle. I would tell him that the legacy he fought so hard to protect was already secure. But for now, I just watched him get in the car, struggle for a second to adjust the seat that was too close to the wheel, and start the engine. "Where to, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked, looking at me with eyes that shone with pure adoration. "Just drive," I said. "The rest we will figure out on the way." The rain battered the roof of my father's Ford sedan, creating a cocoon of noise that isolated us from the rest of Chicago. Sterling gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, his eyes fixed on the road. But I knew his mind was spinning. He had me back. Yes, but the air between us still vibrated with the unspoken, the fear of the future, the weight of the lies we had told to protect ourselves. "Cassandra," he started, his voice rough. "About the future. I want to be clear. I don't care about the company. If being the CEO means losing you, I will step down. I will sell Apex. We can move to a farm in Vermont. We can do whatever you want." I looked at him, at the profile I had memorized in secret for years. He was serious. The man who had spent his life building an empire was ready to burn it all down just to keep me. "We are not moving to a farm. Sterling," I said softly, "you are allergic to hay, and I like good sushi too much." "I am serious," he insisted, glancing at me. "I don't want you to feel trapped by the legacy. I don't want you to think you have to stay because of the expectations." I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the cool, glossy paper I had been carrying around for days. The ultrasound image. "Pull over," I said. Sterling frowned. "Here we are on the side of the highway. Pull over, Sterling." He signaled and guided the car onto the shoulder. Killing the engine, the wipers stopped, leaving the windshield blurred with rain. He turned to me, his expression anxious. "What is it? Are you okay? Did I say something wrong?" I didn't speak. I simply pulled the folded piece of paper from my bag and smoothed it out on the center console, right between us. Sterling looked down. In the dim gray light, The black and white image was grainy, but the shape was undeniable. A tiny, bean-shaped blur, a heartbeat captured in static. He stared at it for a long time. The silence stretched, heavy and profound. He blinked, once, twice, as if trying to clear his vision. "Is this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Is this from before? From the fake?" "It is dated yesterday," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It is real. Sterling, no contracts, no PR strategies, no lies." I placed my hand over his on the console. "The future largest shareholder of Apex Horizon wants his dad to come home, and he or she wants you to stop worrying about legacies and start worrying about assembling a crib." Sterling let out a sound that broke me. It was a sob, raw and unguarded. He picked up the ultrasound image with hands that shook violently, holding it as if it were made of spun glass. Tears spilled over his lashes. Tracking through the stubble on his cheeks, the ruthless machine dissolved, leaving only a man awestruck by a miracle. "We are having a baby," he choked out, looking at me with eyes full of wonder. "A real baby." "We are," I smiled. "Crying with him?" He unbuckled his seatbelt and practically lunged across the console, pulling me into a desperate, crushing kiss. It tasted of salt and rain and pure, unadulterated joy. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine, his breathing ragged. "Marry me," he whispered. "We are already married, Sterling." "No," he shook his head intensely. "That was a deal. That was a performance. I want to do it right. I want to propose to you in a rusted Ford on the side of the highway with nothing to offer you but my heart. I want to ask you to be my wife, not my partner, not my asset, just my wife." He took my hand and pressed it to his chest. "Cassandra Hawthorne, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and this baby for the rest of my life?" "Yes," I whispered. 1,000 times, yes. 2 years is a long time in the business world. Long enough for empires to rise and fall. Long enough for a scandal to become a legend. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my office, adjusting the lapel of my white blazer. The name on the door no longer read Vortex Corp. It read Phoenix Corporation. Sterling had given me the company, but I had rebuilt it. I had gutted the toxic culture Liam and his cronies had instilled. I had fired the sycophants. I had rebranded, refocused, and launched Project Aurora, the real version, the perfect version. It had revolutionized the market. Phoenix was no longer a rival to Apex. We were a powerhouse in our own right, operating in a symbiotic partnership that terrified Wall Street. "Mrs. Blackwood," my assistant poked her head in. "The car is ready for the charity gala, and Mr. Blackwood is texting to ask if you remembered to bring the emergency snacks." I laughed, checking my clutch. "Tell him yes. Goldfish crackers are secured." I walked out of the office, feeling the hum of productivity around me. This was mine. I hadn't inherited it. I had earned it. The charity gala was being held at the Field Museum. It was the event of the season. A glittering assembly of Chicago's wealth and power. Sterling met me at the entrance, looking devastating in a tuxedo. He didn't look gaunt anymore. He looked vibrant, happy, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he saw me. "The CEO looks hot tonight," he murmured, kissing my cheek. "You don't look so bad yourself." "Mr. Chairman," I teased. We moved through the crowd, a power couple in the truest sense. People didn't whisper behind their hands anymore. They approached us with respect. We weren't a scandal. We were an institution. Towards the end of the night, I went to the bar to get sparkling water. The crowd was thinning. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am?" The voice was familiar. Not the tone, which was subservient and tired, but the pitch. I looked up, standing behind the bar, wearing a cheap black vest and holding a rag, was Jessica Thorne. She looked older. Her blonde hair was dull, pulled back in a messy bun. The diamonds were gone. Her face was lined with exhaustion. The Thorne family empire had collapsed shortly after the Vortex scandal. Thanks to the investigations Sterling and I had triggered, her father was under house arrest. Jessica, the princess who had sneered at my dress, was pouring drinks for the people she used to rule. She froze when she saw me. Her hand tightened on the bottle of vodka. Shame flushed her neck a mottled red. "Cassandra," she breathed. "It is Mrs. Blackwood," I corrected gently. She looked down. "Right, Mrs. Blackwood, water. Please." She poured the glass with trembling hands and slid it across the marble counter. She looked like she wanted to say something, an apology, an insult, a plea, but she swallowed it. I took a sip, watching her. I waited for the anger to rise. I waited for the urge to humiliate her, to do to her what she had done to me in Paris, but nothing came. No anger, no satisfaction, just a mild, distant pity. She was a ghost from a life I no longer lived. I reached into my clutch and pulled out $100 bill. I placed it in the tip jar. "Keep the change," I said. Jessica stared at the money. "Why?" she whispered bitterly. "Are you mocking me?" "No," I said, giving her a genuine smile. "I am thanking you." "Thank you. If you hadn't taken him," I said, leaning in slightly, "I might have married him. You took the trash out of my life. Jessica, you gave me the space to find my husband. For that, I will always be grateful." I turned and walked away, leaving her staring at the bill, realizing that my happiness was a far greater revenge than any insult I could have hurled. The next morning, we had an appointment I had been dreading, but one that Sterling insisted was necessary for closure. The visitation room at the correctional facility was cold and smelled of bleach. We sat on one side of the thick plexiglass. Liam was brought in. 2 years in prison had not been kind to him. He was thin, his skin sallow, his hair was thinning. He sat down heavily, picking up the phone. Sterling picked up ours. He put it on speaker so we could both hear. "You came," Liam croaked. His eyes darted between us, taking in Sterling's hand resting protectively on the back of my chair, the glow of health on our skin, the undeniable aura of unity that surrounded us. "You asked to see us," Sterling said calmly. "You said you had information about the missing Vortex funds." "I do," Liam said, licking his dry lips. "But I want a deal. I want to transfer to a minimum security facility. This place, it is hell. We are not here to make deals." "Liam," I said, leaning forward, "we found the funds months ago. You hid them in the Cayman accounts under your mother's maiden name. We recovered everything." Liam's face fell. "Then why did you come?" "To see if you have changed," I said honestly. "To see if you were sorry." Liam looked at me. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Liam, the manipulator. "I am sorry. Cass, I miss you. Every night in this cell. I think about us. I think about what we could have been." He looked at Sterling. "She doesn't belong with you, Blackwood. You bought her. You just—" "Stop," I cut him off. My voice wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "He didn't buy me, Liam. He earned me, every single day." I stood up. I looked at the man who had abandoned me at the altar, the man who had tried to kidnap me. I looked at his misery, his desperation, his smallness. "I am happy, Liam," I said. "Truly, deeply happy. I have a husband who worships the ground I walk on. I have a daughter who is the light of my life. I have a company I built with my own hands." I took Sterling's hand. He squeezed it tight. "And the worst part for you," I continued, "is that you have to sit in this box for the next 13 years knowing that you created this. You pushed me into his arms. You made me strong enough to leave you. You are the architect of your own hell. And my paradise." Liam slammed the phone against the glass. "You bitch. You—" The guards grabbed him as they dragged him away, screaming obscenities. I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. We walked out of the prison into the bright sunlight. Sterling pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." I smiled. The Sovereign Hotel ballroom looked exactly as it had 3 years ago. The crystal chandeliers sparkled. The gold molding gleamed, but the atmosphere was entirely different. There were no whispers of pity today. There were no live streams of the disaster. The room was filled with our friends, our families, and our daughter, Ilara, who was currently 2 years old and running down the aisle throwing rose petals with enthusiastic inaccuracy. We were renewing our vows. Sterling stood at the altar, but he hadn't walked in at the last minute to save the day. He had been standing there for an hour, greeting guests, laughing, holding Ilara, checking his watch not with anxiety, but with anticipation. He looked up when the music started. Can't help falling in love. I walked down the aisle alone. I didn't need anyone to give me away. I belonged to myself, and I was choosing to give myself to him. I wore a dress of soft blush silk, simple and elegant. When I reached the altar, Sterling handed Ilara to my mother and took my hands. His eyes were shining with tears. 3 years ago, Sterling began, his voice thick with emotion, I stood on this spot and asked you to pretend. I asked you to play a role. He paused, looking at the crowd, then back at me. But the truth is, I was the one pretending. I pretended I was just saving a colleague. I pretended I didn't love you. I pretended I could live without you. He squeezed my hands. Cassandra, you are the beat of my heart. You are the logic in my chaos. You are the mother of my miracle. I promise to never pretend again. I promise to be your husband, your partner, and your biggest fan, every single day, until the last star burns out. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Sterling, you saved me from humiliation, but then you saved me from myself. You taught me that I didn't have to be small to be loved. You gave me the world, and then you gave me a family to fill it. I love you more than data, more than logic, more than life itself. The officiant, the same terrified man from 3 years ago, now looking much more relaxed, smiled. You may kiss the bride. Sterling leaned in. The world faded away. There was no audience, no cameras, just us. Thank you, he whispered against my lips, his voice trembling. For what? I whispered back. Thank you for letting me be the groom for real. I smiled, tears streaming down my face. I looked out at the room, at my daughter clapping her chubby hands, at my parents wiping their eyes, at the life I had built from the ashes of disaster. You were always the groom. Sterling, I said. I just had to wait for you to show up. We kissed, and the applause that erupted wasn't polite. It was thunderous. It was a celebration of a love that had survived lies, kidnappings, and corporate wars. I was Cassandra Blackwood. I had been abandoned at my own wedding, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you so much for listening to this story of heartbreak, revenge, and ultimate redemption. I hope Cassandra and Sterling's journey reminded you that sometimes, when life closes a door, it opens a penthouse elevator. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below, telling me where you are listening from right now. Are you cooking dinner in London, driving to work in Sydney, or relaxing in bed in New York? Let's connect in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Crimson Drama Stories channel. Like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can discover this story. Your support means the world to me.